about the deficit. They're not pleased about the increase in tuition, so they are echoing what our faculty and staff and labor, our bargaining unions have been saying. And that's helpful, right? That's helpful. Like it's my job to listen to it and not be defensive, but to work to address their issues. So that's been helpful just to see how they're doing, and their needs are so vast and different across the campuses. Some of the questions they've asked, though, more access to services. They've asked about parking lot hotspots. So even after hours, they can go to any of our parking lots across the state and access, Wi-Fi. I'm like, yeah, I've done that before. So, like, why not? Let me put that on the list. That's a great idea. They've asked about more student activities and the cuts to student activities. I've been getting athletics questions from every campus from our students. From every campus, they're like, we need athletics. I'm like, that's a different animal, but I said let's add that to the list and begin to explore. So really helpful. Last week we had a business roundtable event at Three Rivers in partnership with Governor Lamont's office and the Office of Workforce Strategies. We will be hosting three business roundtable events. One at Three Rivers, I forget the other two campuses, but it's an opportunity for us to engage with industry leaders and partners to one, tell them about our workforce development portfolio, what we're doing, some of our highlights, but also get feedback from them in terms of what they would like to see in terms of our programming. So many of them are asking to partner with our faculty. They want to lend their support and expertise to our faculty. So we want to figure out better ways to activate, right, and connect people there. And also just their concerns too. Their concerns too with the merger. So great opportunity here from business and industry. The executives on this call, I think, I think I went unhinged last week, and I think I think Professor Vandermark, you were in the meeting too for Leadership Council. I haven't been pleased with communication, right? And you might say, well, Maduka, you're preaching to the choir. I know, but still, like I haven't been pleased with communication because I think one, there are a lot of great things that are happening that aren't getting to the people to know that, hey, we're doing these things, or the very challenges that we're having, there are people working on these challenges that consist of leaders, faculty, and staff, but it's not getting to the masses to say, we heard you, we acknowledge it, we are working on it, here's our progress. So I kind of just lost my mind and just said, it starts with the executive leadership. And there's other communication strategies going out there, but really, my approach will be kind of like the top 10 burning issues. And I know we have 1,000 burning issues, but really the top 10 burning issues, and work on a way to publicly display these top 10 issues per our executive leadership, what we're doing about it, where it is in terms of the progress of rectifying these issues, who are involved, who's the owner, et cetera, and making that public so it's transparent and people know that, okay, they're working on those things. So that's more from like a centralized global area. And then each campus CEO will be tasked with identifying 5 to 10 areas per their campuses that are just on fire based on their feedback for their constituents. And again, make that publicly visible to our folks. Because I think there are things that absolutely you senators and other members of our college have been vocal forever about things that have to be improved and fixed, provided, et cetera. And we have to address that. But I think there's a disconnect in terms of how communication is getting out there. And I have to micromanage that, at least from an executive standpoint, to turn down the temperature. I think even like with our facilities, I've been hearing concerns about, we're failing to address the facilities needs. And I think we have to do a better job explaining how like capital bonding like works here in Connecticut, right? So for example, my office or CT State cannot take capital bonding that's been authorized for capital, CT State capital, and give it to CT State Tunxus. I don't have the authority or ability to do that, but we have to make that crystal clear with our folks. I think too, we have to figure out a way, and we will, to publicly list and communicate to our college, here's a master list of capital bonding projects across CT State. Here is their status, right? Here is a quote unquote capital bonding funds that have been authorized versus the funds that have been released. And those are two different things, right? So we are in the hundreds of millions of dollars as a system. I want to say it's in the $300 million mark of capital bond fundings for CT State and the CSUs that has been authorized by the General Assembly. But those funds have not been released, and therefore funds are sitting there. So have it be it's Norwalk's B Wing, have it be it's Kitty Hawk, Naugatuck Valley, have it be it's as Nuntuck, have it be it's Middlesex and all of our campuses, right? The advocacy has happened. The General Assembly has been made aware, but the authorization to release the funding hasn't transpired, right? And I think we have to do a better job making sure that that's crystal clear so people understand the mechanisms and nuances of that, but that we're still continuing to advocate for that. And also, too, I think we just have to own it and just say that it's two set of rules. It's us versus UConn, right? So when there is bond authorization for UConn, typically the funds are immediately released for UConn. We're under a different set of rules. I don't know why. I'm not saying it's good, but like that's the reality, right? And I think our folks need to understand that. So we're not infighting as if your campus CEOs aren't advocating day in and day out for the necessary improvements to labs, to classrooms, to roofs, you name it. Like that work is being done, but we don't ultimately dictate whether or not those funds are released. So I want to make sure that we publicly display all of that information. So again, we're being transparent. Carrie, I saw your hand up. Did you want to chime in real quick?
Yes, thanks, Dr. Maduko. I wanted to just build on what you were saying. Presently, the Connecticut State Community College has $218.95 million in bond authorizations. In the state of Connecticut, in order for those dollars to move forward, they have to go through the State Bond Commission for allocation. That's a joint legislative executive body chaired by the governor, and he sets the agenda and he sets it alone. So we need that to be allocated in order for those projects to move forward. As President Maduko was saying, UConn has a program called UConn 2000 that's been reauthorized a number of times, and they have automatic bond allocations, meaning they get to bypass the State Bond Commission. They're the only state entity that has that ability. And if you observe in the governor's recommended bond budget, they're getting recommended $95 million more in bond authorizations that would be automatically allocated this year.
Right. So again, we as CT State, starting with me, we have to do a better job educating our folks, making that information publicly accessible and transparent, and explaining just these logistical, legislative, and executive branch things that we don't dictate, but that they are there, and they have served as just barriers for the necessary funds to get to our campuses and get to our facilities to make the much needed updates and renovations that we deserve, that our people, our students, our employees deserve. So yeah, work more to come. I'm confident by the end of this month, we'll have at least our beta version of that communication tool that not only through my president's post, but it will be posted somewhere in my webpage where easily accessible. Here are all the things that are on fire that we're working on. So people know that, the concerns are getting to me, getting to our executive leaders, and we are taking the initiative to work on that. We are not perfect and we are not tending to everything, but at least, I want to make sure people feel like it's not being hidden. So more to come there. We have some open executive positions. So we have the permanent CEO position for Housatonic. That position has been posted. I've selected a chair, and then the process by which the search committee will be developed, that's driven locally. So I've been working with Professor Kane. She'll be leading the charge to do a call out for volunteers and then to determine who's going to serve in committee to serve on the initial stages of that. So that's ongoing, and I'm confident that we'll identify the lone finalists prior to our faculty going off contract, so there can at least be that initial meet and greet by the Housatonic community with the permanent CEO. So any questions about that, please let me know. We'll start a search for the permanent vice president of enrollment management. So as you know or don't know, Tamika Davis is in an interim role. She's eligible to apply for the position, but we're going to do a national search that's going to be open internally and externally for whomever is interested. and start that process. So, we have some positions and we have some upcoming and pending and potential vacancies. And as those come to fruition, I will share that with the college community. And then last but not least, I'm working on 3 areas per my office. So all I hear is AI this, AI that. And I think with our artificial intelligence, I think what's missing from it is we as higher ed being told we have to do AI. But my whole thing is, what are we doing to invest in our faculty and staff to give them the skill set, right, to apply maybe AI principles to their areas if they want to? Might be some faculty and staff, they're like, get that the hell away from me. That's your God-given right. But for those who are interested, I want to create that mechanism. So I'm in some early discussions with the potential AI fellowship that CT State would provide, and it would be open to our leaders, faculty, and staff. Nothing has come to fruition. Nothing has been finalized. I think as I get more information and at least develop the framework, that's something that I would share with the College Senate for your take on that. That's something I would share to Dean's Council. That's something I would share in my cabinet just to get that feedback. To one, maybe make some adjustments and some revisions to that framework. And then two, ultimately make the decision, is that something that I want to move forward with, right? So I want to provide the resource for those who are interested in learning more and developing some skills tied to artificial intelligence and automation. So more to come. Still some months away, but I just want to give you a heads up on that. Next, enrollment strategy and outreach. So we are 2 percentage points up in enrollment in terms of our FTE. So that's due to the tremendous work of everyone in recruitment and enrollment and admissions and our guided pathways advisors and our teams across our campus and our leaders and our faculty. Team effort, right? Again, 2 percentage points is a big deal, especially just how for years it was double-digit declines, right? So it's a testament to our hard work. We have stopped the bleeding. Like year over year, we have stabilized enrollment, right? But we have to be more aggressive. And I think there's some strategies that we've yet to adopt that I want to explore and then work with campus teams and the team in New Britain. So for example, I think in our census report for the fall, it lists our top 10 high school feeders, right? As it relates to new enrollment, right? And when it comes to new enrollment, students straight from high school. And when you look at our top 10 feeder high schools, we don't crack the triple digits with any of them. Mathematically, that's impossible. Like something is missing, right? So I wanted to have more drill down enrollment campaigns as it relates to subpopulations of students, right? So case in point, students who are on SAB, students that are on probation, students that withdrew but are 15 to 12 credits away from a credential, right? Students that still have Pell eligibility and therefore can probably take some more courses. High school students are required to fill out a FAFSA in the state of Connecticut. What I want to do, I want to go a step further. When we're doing our outreach in the high schools, well, these students are already in the computer lab to fill out the FAFSA. Might as well just fill out a CT State application while you're there, right? Like there are things that we have to be more aggressive. Starts with the superintendent, starts with the principal. But again, I think that will help us continue to go in a positive direction as it relates to our enrollment growth and health. So I'll start working with Tamika Davis and her team and start to communicate with various constituents, including this group, as we get on that path. And then two, FAFSA is a bleep show nationally. The Department of Ed's responses, we're working on it, and they shrug. I think there's a shrug emoji that they give too. So we need to factor that into our outreach for fall of 24 and how like that is going to hurt us, and we're going to have to work even harder to counter those challenges. So that is it for my updates with 28 seconds to remain. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer. But again, good seeing all of you. And I think this is our first Senate meeting of the year, right? No? Second? See, my memory's so washed, right? Nicolo, I don't even know your last name anymore. That's how bleeping crazy it's been. But again, any questions here or offline, feel free to reach out to me. So thank you.
Thank you, President Manduca. And I do want to take a moment first to acknowledge I forgot to begin our recording. So that started during President Manduca's address. And the second thing is I want to recognize that Of everyone in CSCU leadership, President Maduko stayed until every one of our people spoke before the Appropriations Committee. That is not true of everyone. I tapped out before 9 p.m. And I learned the next day that thank you, President Maduko, for staying late into the night. I think that says something about your commitment to supporting our people. Also, folks, I know we just approved the agenda, and I know that Carrie Kelly is supposed to be next. And I also know I sometimes break the rules, and I'm about to do that. I didn't hear back from Jason, and I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make it, and I see he is here. So Jason Seabury from Curriculum Congress, we exchanged a couple of emails about the assessment piece, and I'm going to break the rule and ask that Jason speak about to the degree to which we can collaborate on this issue or anything else. And you have President Maduko's extra time, Jason, so that's like 4 or 5 whole minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Maduka, and he's heading out. Hello, everybody. My name is Jason, and I'm the chair of Congress. And I can see that there are a few other Congress members here, Mike and Merdad and Miguel. So just we had discussed, and I've discussed between meetings with a number of people, including Al, just about this idea of trying to take stock of where we are with governance. And I know that the current governance model was put together by a number of people, including people in this room. And I think that now that we've had a year and a half of this governance model, it's time to look at and see what's working and what's not working. And unfortunately, during the Congress meetings, we just haven't had time to devote to this issue. For those of you that might not know, our meetings are just full proposals. Obviously, in the best of times, it would have been difficult to put together a whole catalog for a statewide college, and because of a variety of factors, we are trying to patch holes just everywhere. So we haven't really had time to devote to this issue of assessing where shared governance is. But there's definitely a number of places, not only on the curriculum side of things, but also on the more policy side of things, a number of places where I think what we have right now isn't filling the needs that exist. So I would love to work with all of you, and I think some common sense first steps would be to solicit feedback from Senate, from Congress, from all of the currently existing shared governance bodies, and then also reaching out to the campuses and any local campus governance leaders, and just asking for people's feedback, and then possibly just putting together a group of people. And I was brainstorming what that group might look like. I tried to ask Congress for some feedback on this. I haven't gotten any yet. Again, we haven't had time in meetings to do so. So I would just kind of open the floor and see if there are any strong ideas about where to start. The ideas that I personally had would be to appoint a group possibly consisting of one representative from each of the campuses. It could be like a local governance leader, and then maybe a few members of Congress and a few members of Senate to get together in a room. I think that you would all agree that it's difficult to draft things in a room of 20 to 50 people. You can't put together a new thing in a group this big. So the drafting group would need to be smaller, but then we would come to Senate and Congress and spend time getting everyone's approval and feedback and ideas in a bigger group. So that's kind of where I would recommend starting. But this is not this is not a Congress initiative. This is something that we see as necessary, but I think it should either start in Senate or start in both places. So that's kind of where I stand with it, and I would love to hear your feedback. Thank you.
So Jason, we already have folks who have opted into a governance assessment committee. So we have designated folks ready to go. We've just been waiting, and that just happened at our last meeting. We've just been waiting to see to what degree Curriculum Congress wanted to join in. And we are open to sharing, to brainstorming how we move forward.
How many representatives volunteered?
From Senate, I think we have about 6.
Okay.
But that's purely from memory.
Yeah, and I have a lot more ideas, but I don't want to be the one to be dictating anything. So I think that I'm happy to participate in that group, and I'm sure that there are other Congress people that will as well. But yeah, I think it should be at the very least a joint task force, if not just Senate led, and I'm fine with either option.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us, Jason. We appreciate that you made it today, and I will start including you on our efforts to get this started.
Okay, thank you, Al.
Thank you. Any questions for Jason? All right, very good. Thank you, folks. All right, moving on to our next agenda item. Carrie Kelly, the Vice President of Finance and Administration. Carrie, I only just learned that you're not technically CFO, that you're Vice President of Finance and Administration, and I learned that because I was on the website.
Yeah, I think the technical title is Vice President of Finance and Administration, but sort of the working title is CFO. So I'll answer to both anytime. So I have to confess, I'm less proficient in sharing in WebEx than I am in Teams. So I hope you can all see this.
We can.
Oh, well, that's great. I can't really see you all anymore. So if there are questions, I'm happy to pause. And if you could let me know, that would be great. So I received a list of questions from President Vandermark, and I welcome the interest. And I think it demonstrates the shared commitment to understanding the budget and the advocacy that this group and the folks that you represent across the campuses have brought to decision makers. And so I'm happy to be here and demystify certain things and increase transparency in the budget, as well as build trust so that you all understand what's in and out and how we approach it. So let me take you through. I do have 37 slides, so if you need me to move faster, just nudge me along. But some of the questions are a little bit repetitive. So the first question was about the CSU operating costs and shared services. So here are the 5 questions and the subparts. Rather than reading them all, hopefully we'll cover them in the materials in the following slides. So the first request was for the expenditures for System Office that we support here from the CT State Community College budget for the period FY19 through 23. Those are all actuals, and then you see 24 budgeted and what we project to be the fiscal year end expenditures. So we don't need to spend too much time here. So I'll be providing the entire slide deck to you all so you can follow up and look at it in more detail. The next slide is shared services, and I'll explain a little bit more about what has gone into that. As you can see, during the same period, 19 through 21, we didn't budget separately for shared services. So that was something that really started in 22, and it's changed a little bit over time. So you can see the amounts have varied. Let me explain a little bit more about what shared services has been. So historically, the System Office, well before the consolidation with the informing the CSU, so even before that, the Community College System Office had provided a high level of services centrally that would be difficult for the 12 separately accredited community colleges to provide on their own. particularly around things like IT and some of those common things that they needed, for example, IT security, and in accounting, the production of the financial statements. And so those had historically been system office services, and I think folks started thinking about them a little bit differently through the period. And then somewhere before the consolidation that predates me, and I believe it started probably around FY19, there were discussions about taking functions that were formerly performed on the 12 separately accredited colleges and bringing them to the system office to create shared services in areas where they had not historically been performed. And so it was an expansion of HR and finance. So finance is a little confusing because finance continues to happen at the campuses as well as happening at shared services and a little bit here at the New Britain office. And then also around FY22, there was an idea that what was termed at the time EMSA, enrollment, admissions, advising, and financial aid, that they would be a transitional shared service. And so that happened during the period as well. And interestingly, System Office has sort of changed what they view shared services to mean over the period and has included facilities. And so I think it's, interesting to look at what is in shared services because it has really changed over time. In FY24, it includes facilities, the parts of fiscal affairs that are not performed on the campuses or by the New Britain office. So that would be accounts payable, accounts receivable, accounting, human resources, the entire enterprise, and labor relations as a subset of that. Information technology, again, a lot of it happens at System Office. There's still a significant part that's happening at the campuses and a variety of other things. So this is a functional analysis of FY23 and FY24 with the mid-year projection. We were also asked to share what the budgets look like for the 12 campuses, and then when the college office here in New Britain was created, you can see that it's added on. So I'm going to move rather quickly through these slides so we have a little more time for the rest of this. I'll be distributing this, as I mentioned before. These are all of the expenditures at the campus level for all 12 campuses in FY19. Similarly, FY20 by campus, FY21 by campus, FY22 by campus, FY23. And what you see here that's a little bit different, and I'll put my cursor over it if you can see it, is the separate distinction of college office. Now, because by this time, the expenses of college office have become larger, more staff had been hired, so they were separately budgeted for increased transparency. And that brings us to where we are in the current fiscal year. This is what we have shared with the board at the last meeting, the finance committee, for the projected expenditures by campus. So this is our anticipated expenditures. So the next questions really centered around how would we characterize the expenditures, and there was a lot of questions. What is the teaching versus non-teaching resources? And then there was a specifically pointed question about how do we finance things with Charter Oak. So let me take you through those two answers. We look to the National Association of College and University Business Officers. They're the preeminent fiscal affairs entity in higher education. And they've come up with a classification of expenditures. And this has been echoed and used in a lot of external reporting in IPEDS and other federal entities. NACUBO led the way, and it's a way of classifying how expenditures and what areas they support. So it's really important because it allows apples to apples comparisons across institutions. And I think it's important because it also helps us internally talk about things. So how do you characterize these things? So NACUBO has established these categories that you see on the right, and they have criteria. Some of them are pretty intuitive: instruction, academic support, research, public service, In our case for public service, things that would classify or would things that we have that are public service are like our Housatonic, our art gallery, right? That's a service to the public. Libraries, maintenance and physical plant, general administration. And it's a little bit distinguished from institutional services. So general administration would be the finance apparatus that cuts checks and pays bills. Institutional services are things like IT that supports the whole enterprise. We do not have a lot of auxiliary enterprises. That's something that's more common at residential institutions or 4 years, but we do have a little bit because we do subsidize some of our cafeteria operations, and so that's reflected there. Hospitals, clinics, obviously we don't have that, and then scholarships, student financial aid, or tuition waivers, presidential waivers, so and employee tuition waivers, as well as statutory tuition waivers. Those are the ones that are enumerated in statute where folks don't get charged and we have to pick up the expense of that. So in looking at teaching and non-teaching, this is a little bit easier for us to answer. We're working on aligning our personnel expenditures to the NACUBO codes. Before the consolidation, the campuses had a uniform chart of accounts for finance. But there was a lot of interpretation, and I think as we consolidated, this was an opportunity to standardize it. And so we're continuing to improve and perfect and get more granularity on how our personnel expenditures happen and what classifications and areas those are in. We've got that pretty much wrapped up on the OE side, and I'll take you through that in a minute. But we can answer the question about what percent of personnel is teaching and non-teaching. So the overall FY24 personnel expenditure before fringe benefits is just shy of $250 million. We define teaching in this instance to be full-time faculty, part-time lecturers, non-credit lecturers, and extension credit lecturers. And in the aggregate across the enterprise, 53.6% are designated as personnel expenditures dedicated to teaching, and 43.0% are for non-teaching personnel. Those of you who are doing math in your head recognize that doesn't add up to 100%. And that's because we felt it was important to exclude student labor and some of the employee accrual payouts, because that's a little bit misleading. So this gives you a sense by campus and in the aggregate where the expenditures are on personnel. We are able to tell a little bit more about the character of the expenditures for other expenses. And so our other expenses for FY24 are about $75 million. The vast majority of those expenditures support the maintenance and physical plant. The next biggest percentage, about 24%, are scholarships and fellowships. That's what we talked about before. That's direct student financial aid, also known as institutional waivers, as well as employee waivers, statutory waivers, and presidential waivers. Institutional services and general administration make up a significant percent. Instruction is next. Student support. And these are for other expenses. So these are non-personnel. These are goods and services. So it could be a subscription cost. It could be the books that are in the library. It could be the materials for a science lab. It's the paper clips and the utilities and everything like that, but it does not pay for personnel. So this is just solely other expenses. And so these are the NACUBO classifications, and this is how our expenditures for FY24 align with that. There was a question about how Connecticut State and Charter Oak budget. We are separate institutions and we're discretely budgeted, but we're co-located here in the same building in New Britain at 185 Main Street. For those of you that have visited, they're on the first and second floors. They did a really nice job with their renovation. It took many, many years, and it was a much higher ticket renovation, which with a whole lot of planning that went in before. It was a project that crossed a particular funding threshold that had to be controlled by the state Department of Construction Services. So it's just at a different scale. But they've been excellent partners with us. They occupy the first and second floor. We occupy the third and fourth floors. The first floor is a little bit smaller with common areas, and part of the parking garage sits on the first floor. So we don't have the exact same amount of assigned square footage. So we occupy 60% of the building. They occupy 40%. And we've agreed to split common costs accordingly. So we share the same HVAC system. So when it needs maintenance or upgrades or repairs, we foot 60% of the bill and they foot 40% of the bill. As I mentioned before, the capital improvements were funded separately. They were well into the planning before anyone came up with the idea of having us located here with them. And they've been very accommodating with things like signage and shared spaces in the lobby. And we have a strong partnership with them. They're an excellent partner to have here in the building, and we share resources. For example, being an online institution, they have a recording studio that's very nice. They've offered to allow us to use that for our faculty and for other purposes. So we're navigating some of that with them. We have more public safety expertise with Chief Shute here. So we take the lead on public safety matters for the building. And, you know, we've just navigated any of the other smaller issues, signage and shared resources. But again, it's important to understand we're separate institutions and we're budgeted separately. The next question is sort of repetitive of the earlier question. And this one was asking about what % of our budget directly benefits students, such as instruction and instructional support. And so I think we're best able to answer that on the OE side. As I mentioned before, we're working very hard to realign all of our personnel expenditures into these distinct NACUBO categories. And for those people who work with their finance offices, and you've heard somebody say, what's your FOP or your FOPL? It's the P, the program. That's the part that we're aligning. So we're creating new chart field 2s for every employee that will realign their expenses. So a couple of years from now, or actually this time next year, if you ask me, you know, what are we spending on mental health? I'll be able to answer that more granularly. I can answer that one better now than I could a year ago. We have really good data on the OE side, and we've worked as we've built that area of the enterprise to have a unique identifier for anyone working in mental health and wellness. So we'll be able to identify those employees and give better internal and external reporting, but we haven't fully arrived. And this is the work that my team of 2 is working on with HR to create a new chart field 2 for all of the personnel so that we're better able to answer those questions. But that brings me to the next question, which is student support services allocation. And this reminds me a lot of the question that the CSCU leaders faced at the Appropriations Committee meeting earlier this week. Representative Hoxa asked, well, what are your wraparound services? And I think that's part of the challenge. How do you define some of these terms? You know, here somebody asked about essential student support services. It gets very hard. I mean, here they enumerated enrollment, counseling, financial aid, tutoring, and library. You know, with a little bit more time, we might be able to answer this question for counseling, financial aid, and library and enrollment. It's a little harder for tutoring because we're working very hard to better classify the EA expenditures. We haven't fully arrived on that yet, but we're working towards that. But this is, again, the work that we're doing so that we can better respond. And then again, I think we're using those NACUBO classifications. Everyone would view essential student support services and define it a little bit differently. We're happy to work with what those definitions are. We're working through all of this and hope to establish more routine internal reporting going forward. We've received a lot of questions on student fees, so that tells me there's a lot of confusion or mythology about it. So I'm really happy to get this. I'll dig down as deep as possible. Let's see, the first one is, can we share how lab fees are paid by students for science lab, art, etc.? How is the money collected? What does it cover? So let me take you through some of this, and hopefully I don't miss any of the subparts of the questions. I think it's really important to explain that the fees that we assess on students are not held in self-balancing accounts, meaning it's a general revenue that's deposited into our overall revenue. We're not transacting directly against those dollars. So these fees were put in place, and many of them are historical, as I believe is a way to generate revenue to partially offset expenses in those particular areas. You know, as a way to sort of recognize that those were cost drivers, and this is a way of bringing in more revenue, but they're not perfectly matched. It's not as though you have a separate envelope where you put all of the money for the lab fees and the funding for the labs can only come out of that envelope, right? So the exception here, and I'll be really clear, is student activity fees. Those are self-balancing accounts. Those are what our state controller would consider trust accounts, and there's a lot of rules. Anybody who's ever worked with the folks in student activities know there's a lot more reporting in this area. Those are self-balancing accounts. So if they overspend, they have to get money from another source to offset that. And then if they have a little bit of a surplus, it rolls forward. That's not the way that the rest of our lab fees, our manufacturing fees, our student material fees are structured. It's a general revenue that's deposited centrally, and then we transact expenses against it overall. And in general, the expenses exceed the fee revenue that's received and deposited centrally. Historically, this all was done at a campus level based on the campus, based on the students that were enrolled in that campus. But since FY23, revenues have been budgeted centrally and expenditures have been budgeted at the component unit, meaning the campus. So that was part of our transitional year until the current year, FY24, where we are a singly accredited institution. Just to share with you, this is a look at the current year projected student fee revenue by category. It totals $37.4 million, and it breaks down into these categories. The biggest among them are extension credit fees. Those are the summer and winter session. They're distinctly budgeted, and that allows us the ability to understand and do analytics on, you know, what is our return on investment? You know, are we meeting our costs of running those extra sessions? And you can see all the other fees here. There was a particularly pointed question about the nursing program fees. The question was, do nursing programs cover all costs for ATI and other similar services? And the answer is yes. The fee of $136.24 covers the ATI expense dollar for dollar. So that happened to be adopted more recently, where I think the fee was established at a level of what the expense was, but that's not necessarily true for some of the older fees that were established. They're not dynamic. They don't index to something. They don't increase as a bill, as the bills or the inflation rate increases. But this one happens to match dollar for dollar. And similar to lab fees, the revenue and expenses are budgeted separately per accounting standards. Again, we had another question about the allocation of lab fees. Do the lab fees paid by students directly contribute to the budget of the campuses and where the classes and the labs are conducted? And again, all the revenues received from any source have been budgeted centrally, and we have been budgeting the expenses where they occur at the campus or component unit. And then I think this brings us to the natural questions folks had about how did it work in the past versus what we're doing now when we were 12 separately accredited institutions, and how has this changed, and where are personnel budgeted, and what other sources of revenue besides tuition and state funding are available. So let me take you all through that. The CSCU was established in 2011, and it succeeded the Community College System Office. Many of you will remember that. And the campuses then and now, the primary source of funding continues to be the state block grant, the state funding that we receive. And the way in which that block grant was divided was highly prescribed. And quite candidly, if I were hired to be the CFO of a system office for 12 separately accredited colleges, all of my attention and focus would be on re-examining the equity of that. And I think each of the 12 campuses could mount an argument that they're more uniquely aggrieved by this formula, the historic formula that existed. There have been ongoing concerns about the equity of how that's been divided. And I don't think there's any perfection to be had, but there are results and consequences of it. And so we had one particular institution that I think the formula didn't recognize some of the unique challenges. And before the consolidation, that institution had a cumulative deficit of almost $10 million because I don't think the formula worked really well. But that was the formula that was adopted, and that's the one everyone knew and understood. We actually have based our FY23 budget as an incremental approach on what was there before, right? So we didn't really turn the ship all at once. We've sort of based our budget on what we had in the past. So we've baked in the good and the bad. So there's continuity of how we divided resources from the past. So let me just take you through, this is a snapshot of the last time the formula, the block grant distribution formula ran. And this was done by our system office. And there's all these little footnotes here. I know they're really hard to see on the screen. I will be sharing this with the College Senate so you can dig in and look. But, you know, there were specific call outs for things like campuses that had garages. Those are incredibly expensive. There were particular things that were put in by legislators for specific programs. All of this caused some campuses to operate in a surplus and some to operate in a deficit. Again, I think that's something that probably required ongoing consideration. If you had a facility coming on in a 2-year period, you got some money to help operate it, but after that, you were kind of on your own. So there's all these things that were baked in. And again, this was all highly prescribed through board resolution. So the budget, there was a question about budgeting personnel at the campuses versus the college office. So in general, full-time and part-time campus positions are budgeted at the campuses. So our faculty are budgeted at the campuses. Most of our EAs are budgeted at the campuses. You know, I think there have been a couple exceptions. And I think you've seen our understanding of this evolve over time as President Maduco joined the organization and sort of reshaped some of the things that were already baked in. So for example, enrollment management, what was formerly referred to as EMSA, enrollment advising and admissions, all of those folks who formerly worked on the campuses were brought together centrally under the leadership of the college office out of New Britain and reported directly. Although they worked on the campuses, they were budgeted centrally. And that was the state of affairs when the budget was adopted this June for FY24. And subsequent to that, as we've continued to evaluate the right structure for the enterprise, a decision was made that 3 of those 4 areas, enrollment, advising, and admissions, should return to the campuses. The dollars are misaligned with that. Today, the dollars sit here, but are here to support the people who are working on the campuses. And when we readopt the budget for FY25, we'll better align that with where the expenditures are occurring. This has also been a point where there's things that we do centrally now as a singular enterprise that the campuses should no longer have to shoulder that cost and navigate that alone. So great examples of that are accreditation expenses. Those should be budgeted centrally, and that was one of the instructions that we provided to the campuses last spring. National memberships, we've been budgeting for those centrally, so the campuses don't put those into the local budgets. And things like system-wide insurance policies or IT costs. So I think we're going to continue to redefine this. We're still a very immature organization, and as we try to align where things should be better funded, we're working towards that. Then there was a question about funding sources available. Oh, what are the funding sources available to the campuses besides tuition or state funding, and how was that before the consolidation versus now? And really, the sources haven't changed. They remain the same regardless of the consolidation. But I will say we don't have a lot in this category, right? I mean, our primary funding source is state funds. Our secondary funding source is tuition. and fees. And so the things that sort of fall outside that category are very, very small. What comes to mind is room rental fees, bookstore commissions, things of that nature. And then I received a question about vacancies, and this is a hard one to answer because there's not a singular list that's well maintained about vacancies. And so I thought the best way to provide some information to you all would be a summary of the current year funded vacancies that are in search. So here's a listing organized by campus of all of the positions that are in active searches. It doesn't reflect somebody who might have just come on and been hired this Friday, the first day of payroll. But these are the positions that are in active search. So you can see there's many vacancies right now. I'm sorry, the font is a little smaller on this one. This is Manchester through Quinnebog, and then Three Rivers through Tungus. So there's quite a number of campuses that are searching for vacant positions. So I'm going to stop sharing. I can bring up a slide at any time if you want, but I think we may have time for questions.
I think we do. I think we have a few minutes that we can squeeze in here. So folks, senators, if you have, Miguel, I see your hand first. Roberta, sorry, I'll come to you next. Go ahead, Miguel.
Carrie, thank you again for your, as always, very thorough and detailed presentations, but thoroughly lacking in data. No, just obviously that's joking, that's in jest. The question I want to ask you is the question we've talked about before, which is the ongoing discussion about the shift of the benefits and the cost burden and all of that. You've talked about there are discussions that are ongoing. Is there any update on that as a potential, A, shifting of the cost to where they should be, and B, helping us to figure out how we're going to get out of this financial problem?
Well, I was really encouraged because I thought that was a significant line of questioning at the Appropriations Committee hearing on Tuesday. And it's an enormous factor as to why we're experiencing a deficit. And I thought that the CSCU Chief Financial Officer, Dr. Lloyd Blanchard, made a really compelling case, not only for CT State, but also for the CSUs. And as many of you know, formerly, if a person was paid for out of the state block grant, all of their fringe, no matter what category, was paid for by the state. And we picked up anybody paid for on the operating fund. And when they realigned the way that they were going to pay for fringe benefits, it made significant changes, not only to our revenue, but also to our expenses. And we would argue that they didn't give us enough revenue to cover the portion of the expenses that we have to cover. And so we have been struggling to get the number right. We've continued to refine it. But overall, the amount of funding that we've received to support fringe benefits is not sufficient. And now we have to bring more money to the table from our operating fund than we've formerly ever had in the past. And that is a direct contributing factor to why we have a deficit in the current fiscal year. I found it incredibly hopeful that there was so much questioning at the Appropriations Committee hearing, because these are the very folks who had to sign off on this plan that was put forth by the administration. And I was very encouraged that they seemed to really grab onto this line of questioning.
Great, thanks, Carrie.
Okay, next up is Roberta, and then Peter.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you so much for your very comprehensive report. I have an affinity for numbers, but it was fast. So forgive me if I did not understand what I thought I heard you say. So when you're talking about the fees, whether it's the student fees or fees associated with courses such as lab courses and things like that. So those fees, if I heard you correctly, are all housed at the college office. And then you all are doling them out to cover expenses at the institutions as needed.
Yeah, I think you've summarized it really succinctly. That's exactly how it's happening. So rather than matching the revenue at the campus, because again, I think as we're now I mean, we could find a way to divide out the block grant. I don't think the way that we did it historically in the past was great, but we could find a way. But I think the more that our students are taking classes across multiple campuses, we know they designate a home campus, but in some cases, they don't even take the class on their home campus. So, or they could just be driving by another campus they have no relationship with when they decide to pay their bill. So how and where we recognize the student tuition revenue is really confusing. And we made a decision that we're a singular enterprise, and so that we should treat the revenue singularly and support the expenses. It sort of reminds me of what the state does for the vast majority of its agencies, right? You don't have the Department of Corrections that has to generate its own revenue to pay for the corrections operations. They all operate out of the general fund. There are some exceptions, there are some self-supporting things like the banking department, they tax the banking industry. And I think that's parallel to that would be our student activities, right? I think we assess a fee on students for student activities. Those fees should remain there and not be used to cross-subsidize something else.
Good. Okay, wanted to make sure the student
Yeah,
piece
right.
was whole, yeah. And then, is that the same, are the, are the fees for transportation, the transportation fee, is that being handled similar to student activity fees?
Yeah, it's kind of a pass-through. We have to pay the Department of Transportation, so we've levied the fee to match what we have to pay. So right now, they match perfectly. It's a complete pass-through. If the Department of Transportation changes that, we would probably have to increase the fee. I can't imagine that they'd increase it, but we'd have to increase it or bring money to the table to pay the delta. So I think that's something that we would want to sort of index to whatever we're being charged. We don't look to make any money off that. It's a complete pass-through.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. Peter and then Mark.
Hi, Carrie. Yeah, first of all, thank you. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of work, and you obviously really tried to address our questions. So thank you for that. There is a lot to unpack. So I do look forward to kind of looking at the slides and that type of thing. But I guess I just wanted to quickly follow up. You talked about, 220 million or whatever, that we have a lot in the capital bonding area, and talked about the allocation process. And I'm just wondering, is it possible for, CT State to kind of get on the UConn plan, meaning, develop a plan or whatever, and just have kind of automatic allocations moving forward too, or is that just pie in the sky at this point?
I think it would be a huge benefit to us as an institution. The state has been loath to allow that to happen. That was actually one of the cornerstones of the Aspire 2030 plan that was put forward last year. I think the executive, meaning the governor, is going to always guard his authority to control the agenda for the State Bond Commission. So I don't think that's likely. I think, there was a confluence of events, and UConn was in the right time at the right place, and they got this deal. Everybody else in the state would love to have this deal. It was sort of a automatic allocations, right?
Mhm.
We had a plan, the CSU had a plan where X dollars were deemed allocated unless the governor actively intervened. That was the next best thing that I ever saw happen, and that was only for the CSUs. I don't think it's likely. I think we need to continue to advocate what the consequence of not allocating these dollars are. And my concern is a lot of these projects were costed out years with an S, years ago, when the unit cost was different. We've seen massive inflation on commodities, but also on labor. So my fear is that when we get these dollars, they're not going to go as far as we once envisioned. So I think, we continue to make the case, as President Paducah was saying, many of the projects within that 218.95 are enumerated projects. So you can't take the money that was designated for the B wing at Norwalk and give it to Northwest.
Mhm.
And similarly, the roof at Naugatuck. But there are general pools of money that support minor capital improvements, code compliance, things like that, where there are campus level allocations, and there's a little bit of a contingency. We work very closely with Keith Epstein and System Office, who really tries to balance the needs of each campus in a pot that's, quite candidly too small. And I think if you look at the things that we're interested in, it's really infrastructure. We're interested in investing and maintaining the physical plant. There's other projects we'd love to see happen. The project at Middlesex, B-Wing, those are some of the big marquee projects that are awaiting allocation, but we haven't been successful in getting that to date.
Thank you.
Okay, we have two more questions and then we're going to move on. Mark and then Nicola. Nicola, you're going to be our last speaker today and then we're going to move on. Thank you, folks.
In regard to shared services, does it look like from your perspective that it has been a good idea to have these shared services? I'm just wondering if maybe our alliance with the state public universities puts two bodies together whose universes are so different that maybe it doesn't make financial sense for us to be together. Should Connecticut State be its own entity separate from the state public universities? How's this marriage going financially?
Well, President Maduco must be offline because I think he would have jumped in already. He has some strong feelings on this topic. But Mark, you're right. And I think these are the questions we continue to ask. I think the folks that envisioned the creation of shared services thought that it would be such a wild success that the CSUs would say, I want to get on board too, and I want some of that. I don't think that's been the experience. So presently, we are the sole client for the shared services for every single thing except HR. Charter Oak also receives it, right? So we're the sole client for IT. We're the sole client for HR. Well, not HR. HR is Charter Oak, but we're the majority client. And we're the sole client for finance. So I think it begs the question, where are these services best provided, best managed? And I think as long as they exist, we need to make them more successful than they've been. And that's the conversations that we're trying to lead. You know, we need service level agreements that articulate the scope of the service. Because in the IT area, it gets very messy, right? What's being done at the campus level by our IT staff versus what's being done by the enterprise IT staff at System Office. So we need to delineate that. I think we need to make that crystal clear. We need to talk about escalation provisions. We need to talk about KPIs. We need to talk about how they're using these funds, again, because those dollars come right off the top of everything else that we have. And so we're left over with the rest of the dollars to manage the rest of the organization. So we need to understand how they're prioritizing our projects. We need to make sure and hold them accountable so they're better serving our enterprise. So, you know, I think there'll be more to come in the HR area, so stay tuned. I think that's one of the areas that needs the most urgent level of attention. But over time, I think these are all the natural questions we should be talking about and thinking about how do we align these resources and who and where directs them. It would be a lot more complicated if the CSUs got on board and it was all being done for all 6 institutions, but that's just not the case. So.
And there you have it, folks. That will be our most watched section, rewatched time and time again. Nick?
I think I just got myself in trouble. So
No, I think what you did, Carrie, is begin to explain something that we all know and we don't know, that we're all experiencing, and you are starting to help us understand why. So Nicola.
Thank you, Carrie, for being here. Real quick question for you, going back to lab fees, right? That the money that's coming in, that the students are paying, coming in as general revenue and being housed in by central office. One of the concerns that I have is, you know, and again, this is very much through a biology or science focus or lens, is that we go through thousands upon thousands of dollars in disposables or consumables every semester at Three Rivers, and I'm sure all of the other campuses do too. The dollar amounts that are coming in as far as student lab fees, I do not think equal the amount that is being, you know, distributed or spent semester wise. Is there a fund where the excess dollars are being housed for when big ticket purchases have to happen? Like I'm thinking the replacement of 30 microscopes for a particular science lab or X number of telescopes, like, you know, large investments, excess of $100,000. So just that I want to make sure that there's money set aside for when those items need to be replaced, if that's something that we're going to have to fight for, or is it going to be, oh, hey, I need 30 new microscopes. Can I please have $150,000? And you'll be like, yep, here you go.
yeah, and I think that's where if we have more robust and better budgeting, nothing should ever be a surprise. I know sometimes no matter how hard folks work, things kind of pop up, but that's something that should be predictable, where we can say on campus X, these things are beyond their useful life, right? Or they're no longer the state of the art. They're not what the instructor needs to support this class, and we can start planning a year in advance for those things that are of a certain threshold that might reach the minor capital equipment. So that sounds to me like microscopes. Again, I think this is why we're not trying to create the lab fees and hold it in a separate little bucket and match it against everything that's expended over here on lab fees. It's just a general revenue to kind of offset areas that we know have increased costs. But we need to do a really good job on planning so that we have an idea, so that when we turn around and say, well, these microscopes are outdated or they're broken and we need new ones, that we have those resources, whether they are meet the criteria and definition of capital expenditures, or if they don't, then we need to start figuring out how do we build that reserve that you kind of described so that we can have the right instructional equipment there. So, I mean, I was trying to figure out what the concerns were by the nature of the questions that were posed. So I think you kind of shed a little light onto that. So that's something we're happy to put more attention to as we work together and with the campuses to develop those budget guidelines and instructions, because a lot of these expenses, or all of these expenses for academic instruction, happen at the 12 campuses. And that's the right direction. They're much, much closer to what's going on. So we really need to ensure that the folks on the campuses who are responsible for figuring out what the resources should look like are talking to the right people on the campuses, the academic leads, so that we can have this idea of when Campus X's microscopes are going to be outdated and to plan accordingly. So thanks, that's really helpful.
All right, thank you, folks. Carrie, thank you so much for taking the time. I think I sent this list to Carrie about midday on Monday, and unfortunately both of us were online working Monday.
We were, yeah.
We certainly appreciate you making the effort and really getting this amount of information to us so quickly. And I also want to thank the members of the committees who sent these questions forward. And we are developing a deeper relationship with a budget and finances than we originally had. So very quickly, I want to recognize Dr. Davis. She told me ahead of time that she only had until 1:50, but here we are. So Dr. Davis is here to talk about enrollment management, and I know that you will be handing this off to your very capable folks.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to join you all to really go over in more depth the drop for non-payment process. And I know we did meet last week with the Student Service and Experience Council as well to kind of preview some of the questions and concerns about what the process is, and, you know, particularly what it is that, you know, the central office staff does to support this process, and then what the campus also does to support this process. So with that, I do want to hand it over. We do have Gail Barrett with us today. We have JD Matheson. We have Gennaro DeAngelis. And for whatever reason, we were unable to get Madeline Santiago on the call. But
I'm here.
I
I'm
think,
on the call.
oh, you are here, Madeline.
Oh, you made it.
I'm here.
Yeah. So this is our committee that has, you know, worked broadly with everyone to develop what this drop for non-payment process is. So in the interest of time, I do want to hand it over so that we can start to just kind of go through and review what that process is, and how we develop those lists, how those lists are disseminated out to the campus, what our exclusions are from the drop for non-payment process, how we're billing students, and then how we are kind of proactively outreaching and communicating to students about the availability and access to their bills, as well as the expectation when payment is due for those bills. So, Gail?
Great, thank you. And I also want to make sure that Steve McDowell is also on the call as well. So the work group that really put this together is a combination of enrollment management, financial aid, finance, and institutional research. So really making sure we're tackling all areas in partnership with the campus outreach teams. So I'm gonna give you a brief kind of outline as far as how the communication planning works, and then I'm gonna turn it over to JD to talk about how the lists were actually put together. So let me look at my notes here. Back in December, Tamika had shared a communication plan drop dates with the CEOs with the direction that campus outreach teams should be on call to work with the phone outreach portion as that campus so chooses to handle it. And call lists were distributed beginning on December 19th in those respective team sites. I do want to share, we took kind of a different route to the communication planning for this spring semester drop. We did about 2 months worth of communication prior to the tuition due date, which I believe was January 2nd of 24. So students, depending on when they were registered, were texted potentially 5 times and emailed 4 times between November and December to let them know that the tuition due date was coming in January and ways to pay attention to their bill and work with financial aid. So that was our pre-drop communication portion. Once the new year came around in January, the communication plan changed from the tuition date is coming to the tuition date has passed. And here's what you need to do to make sure you're not dropped for non-payment. There were 2 drop dates this semester, as you know. We had a drop date on January 10th, as well as on January 24th. As far as specific numbers of students who were dropped, on the January 10th drop date, a total of 2,944 students were dropped. And on January 24th, a total of 1,294 students were dropped, with a re-enrollment rate of approximately 65%. And JD can certainly clarify that as well.
It was by census, actually 73% had re-enrolled.
Wonderful. Okay, so even better. So yes, we had actually the highest re-enrollment rate after this particular term for drop for non-payment. As a comparison for you, the re-enrollment rate in fall of 22 was 64%, and the re-enrollment rate in spring 23 was 65%. This is our highest re-enrollment rate that we had this particular term. That's really a brief overview of the outreach that was done, but I do want to turn over to JD about the particular list to which we were doing the outreach for. So JD, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Gail. Yes, well, it all starts with the student's account. It starts off with their basic charges and payments, and I query those from our banner system and subtract the payments from the charges to get the starting number, but it doesn't stop there. We then look at any authorizations that have been posted to the student's accounts receivable. That would include financial aid authorizations. That would include loan authorizations. And it also subtracts any memos that are posted to their account. Memos could be expectations that a waiver will be paying for their tuition, expectations that they will pay an installment plan that they've applied for that will come off of their tuition balance. Those numbers are then subtracted further from their balance for that term, and that is their term balance. But the policy is not just to drop students $500 in arrears or more for that term. It is for their total account history. It doesn't matter if it's been 5 years or 15. If those charges are still on the account and not paid for, it is BOR policy to count that and to drop those students. And that's important to remember when it comes to an installment plan, is that installment plans only cover the charges from the semester they're enrolling. So current semester charges, not past charges. So that is what produces the student's balance. And then the initial list is created from any student who has a balance of $500 or more. And that is when I start applying exemptions. Any veteran is exempt from the drop for non-payment process. And I look for veterans every single place we can find them. If they self-identified as a veteran, if they have VA assistance, if they are either, if we have any record, if on their FAFSA they said that they were a veteran, I count them as a veteran. If they have any indication in their accounts receivable that they have received any sort of aid as a veteran, either post 9/11 GI Bill or Veterans Administration aid, they are marked as a veteran and excluded from the drop for non-payment process. Any dual enrollment students are excluded from the drop from non-payment process. Any prison education program, or what was formerly known as Second Chance Pell students, are excluded from the drop for non-payment lists. And any students, even if they have any posted waiver, even if that waiver does not fully cover their tuition for that term or previous terms, they are excluded from the drop list. And so that creates a long list of student IDs with the various characteristics so that people can verify that those students who should be excluded were and should be included were. And that list, edited for certain privacy reasons, depending on who it goes to, go out to several different groups. The first is to Madeline Santiago, who checks it for the drop purposes. But Madeline also takes another step further, because my lists are always based on a snapshot from the previous night's data. Madeline makes sure during the drop process that if any student pays during the day, even though that is after their payment due date, that they are excluded from the drop process as best she can. My list also goes to enrollment management. Through Tamika, Tamika set up teams for every single campus to do outreach. So in each one of those teams, every time a new list is requested, usually by a schedule beforehand, but I always produce them on demand if necessary. I upload a list of all the students for that campus by home campus that are at risk for being dropped for non-payment, along with their email and phone number, so that campuses can do outreach. And I think Tamika and Gail might be able to talk more about the outreach process on that end after I'm done explaining my side. It also goes to student affairs, so that advisors can reach out, and academic affairs for faculty to reach out if they have specific students they want to contact. They can do that. I believe that's on a campus by campus basis. And that is essentially the process. There are weak links in the chain. Properly identifying Second Chance Pell students and veterans and dual enrollment students, high school students, requires that their data be properly stored in Banner, and or that the conventions for storing that data are known to me and anybody else producing the lists. And we had some hiccups this past term. There were a couple of dual enrollment students who were listed as post-secondary. That was remedied before anybody was dropped. There were Second Chance Pell students who showed up because there was a change in the way that Second Chance Pell sections were saved in Banner. We resolved that before any drops happened there. There were some issues with identifying, well, I don't know if there are any issues with identifying veterans. I've never been told that we missed a veteran, but I do know that certain veterans have talked to their campus leadership to say that their applications are going through, and those CEOs have then contacted me and asked me to exclude students from the drop list. And so there's a final exclusion process where if somebody in campus leadership reaches out to me and says, there's a legit reason the student shouldn't be dropped, and they're the ones who decide if it's a legitimate reason, not me. If the student shouldn't be dropped, I take their word for it. I put them in a list of an exclusion list, which further excludes them from the spreadsheet that goes out, and they are excluded. And that is the process.
And if we want to pause for a minute and make sure if there's any question at this point, Elle, before we share
Well,
more.
I'm sure there will be questions.
I see hands. Okay, sure.
So, Roberta.
Thank you, JD, and thank you, Gail. So, when a student pays online, so we get these magical lists that you've done an amazing job putting together and compiling for us that come down to the colleges, regardless of who's doing outreach to the students about the fact that they're going to be dropped. We give them instructions. They can pay online or, contact directly the payments office, etc. When they pay online, the system does not automatically remove that the hold from their account. And I'm sure Gail's team is well aware of it. So after that last round of phone calls and outreach happens, they make payments time and time again. I can say from my own experience, I get the panicked text, calls in the panic messages and Teams or emails. I was dropped from my classes. I made the payment this morning. And then of course, unfortunately, my campus, we have limited bio classes, and that class gets snatched up and then they can't get back into their class. Now, aside from the fact that it is their responsibility to make their payment, you know what I mean? But if they've already made the payment, is there a way other than to manually reach out to our bursar and say, can you remove this hold? Is there any way to work the technology so that when a payment is made, it automatically removes the hold?
Sure. And I'm actually going to ask Madeline. I'm actually going to ask Madeline to weigh in from the finance perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, I'm just not sure what the holds have to do with the payments, because students can make payments even when they have holds, and the hold doesn't have to be removed from the account, because a student who has a balance of less than $500 can still have a hold and won't be included in the drop for non-payment. So
students Madeline, this is Roberta. So students who have made their payment for whatever reason are still online. If they do it at the last minute on the last day, as an example, they still get dropped from their classes unless we manually contact our bursar.
So that's not so much a whole
I would
situation,
really-
that's just a lack of automation
Yeah,
of
that's
the
not-
connection. between
Yeah,
the
it's the
two.
automation to remove the hold or whatever else has to be done.
So right now, because we have multiple terms running at the same time, like we have, spring, which soon we'll have summer registration. We can't have automated holds. We would have to, we did talk to Lucian about doing, removal of holds automatically. Later on in the future, we have to make finance changes, and it just involves finance in terms of having charges future effective dated and whatnot. So, but that really doesn't have anything to do with the drop for non-payment. But I do have to say, every single morning we do run the hold process that will remove holds for students who have a zero balance. So that we are doing every morning, even though it's not running like every hour in Banner or whatnot, we are doing it every single day in the morning. And then throughout the day, the campuses will email Air Shared Services, and we've removed the hold within, at the most 24 hours is what we take to remove the holds, but most of the time it's done fairly quickly.
Okay, so the messaging that helps to understand, thank you. But so the messaging that we're giving our students is that you have until this time you have to pay or you're going to be dropped. And so they go online to pay. And so before we do the drop, say at 4 o'clock at night, are we rerunning it so that those students who cut their bill down below 500?
Yes.
We're
That's
still
what
seeing
JC
some
mentioned.
things.
If a student paid before the payment due date, there is no reason why that should not be posted to the account by the time that I run the drop list. If there is a reason that's not happening, there's there's a gap in the process.
GG, I'm sorry, I'm not talking about those students that did what they were supposed to and paid, it's their first contact.
Yeah, the ones who paid before the drop date, not the due date.
Yeah, I'm talking about the students that are on the list. We're doing an outreach and saying, look, you have until tomorrow to make this payment.
Yeah.
It's usually at a certain time.
Roberta, I will tell you that if a drop is scheduled to take place at 10 a.m., at 9:59 a.m., we are still double and triple checking to make sure that we are dropping accurately. So I will tell you that is happening up until the moment we do the drop.
Okay, that's what I wanted. Thank you.
There's supposed to also at least be a business day between the time we're telling them that you need to make your payment by this point and when the drop list is run.
That is correct. Yes,
So-
the due date and the drop date are not the same date. That is correct.
Right. So
Okay.
maybe there's an issue with the communication there that the student needs to be told that they are going to be dropped, that we will do our best not to drop them. Well, I don't even know if we should say that. I'm not going to get into the communication aspect because that's not my bailiwick.
Right,
But,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, but the drop list is always run with data that is post the final payment date.
Okay.
And,
Okay,
and so
thank you.
if there are individual situations that you can, where you think that happened, but it didn't, please reach out to Madeline and I and provide us some names and preferably banner IDs, and we could look to see why that student might have been missed and whether or not the student payment was posted. And, it could have been a confusion between whether a student knowing they needed to pay their, current balance and total balance. There could be any measure of communication issues there, considering it's still a manual process.
So one of the things that I'd like to do, Sandra brought this to our attention at our last meeting. Sandy, can I tag you and ask our senators who have questions about specific situations to reach out to Sandra, email her the question, the concern, if it's related to a particular student, provide her as much information as possible. And Sandy and I will work with Gail and JD and Tamika to the degree that as wide a swath of people as we need to in order to get the questions asked and answered. I want to keep the meeting on track, so I'm going to ask, I'm going to move to Sandy because I realized her hand was up before Roberta. But Michelle, please just send your question or your concern to Sandra, and we will follow up with each person. So Sandy, the floor is yours, and then we're going to move on.
Thank you. I just had a couple concerns, and my staff has asked me this also. When students sign up on the payment plan, and the way it works now, I guess it's 4 payments. So if they sign up the last week before school starts, and they don't make that second payment because it's already past the tuition due date, they don't make that second payment by the day of classes, they get dropped. Now, I have a problem with that because they're signing a contract saying they're going to pay. So I feel we should at least work with them, not drop them, and give them the opportunity to make the next payment, keep them in classes. And if they don't, then they can't register for spring. So you kind of have a guard in place for that. And the other thing is, people that register the last week of school or right before school starts, they get right in classes. They never get dropped. They don't make their payment right away. So there's really no equity sometimes, I find. So I don't know if there's answers to these or if we could talk about them, how we could work with them. Because that's just what we see from our end. Thank you.
I would say that if that's happening with installment plans, then there's something wrong in the process, because the installment plan, the due dates come with expiration dates where the memo for that payment, it continues to be a payment on their, counted as a payment on their account until the due date passes and no payment has happened. So if their first due date is after the drop and whether or not they've paid, that should still not be counted against that payment should be that installment should be counted down off of their balance. So if that is happening, then there might be a bug that we need to address.
So I think what we're going to go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, but we will continue to work with the folks who have been identified on this call. Yes, please email your questions to Sandra, and we will continue to work on this issue.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, folks. All right, so now we are moving on to the very exciting topic of information technology and the very scary topic, Jared, of changing our emails.
Yes. So, hi everyone. So, so I have the enviable task of explaining what's going to happen with our emails And you know, my first degree was in philosophy, where I would make simple things complicated. So in this example now, I'm going to try to make something that's complicated simple, or at the very least understandable. So I'm going to share my screen here just to, so while I'm talking about some of these changes, you can see examples of them. And but this won't be a full-on presentation. Here we go. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So our email addresses are changing. They'll be all in the form of first name dot last name at ctstate.edu. And for any naming collisions or things like that, if there's two, if we hire another Jared Borak, it would be Jared.Borak2 for the second one, and so on. You'll never see someone with a 1 after their name. They'll always begin with 2 and down for as many numbers as we need to add for any naming collisions. And your old emails will be forwarded. So I've heard some rumors that they were not going to be, and they will. They will be forwarded. I've already been migrated over. So if you get an email from me, it comes from jared.borak@ctstate.edu. And all of we've tested several times, and all the old emails still come to me. So we know that forwarding works. However, that's where the simple part ends. Our current emails, we actually have several. All of us have at least 2 emails. Some of us have more than that. And talking about our current emails, we all have a ComNet email, right? And that's in the form of your first initial, last name, that @ symbol, and then usually designated by campus, then .comnet.edu. Everyone has that, and most of us have a couple of different vanity email addresses. These are addresses that don't have the ComNet in them. They could be in several different formats. I've seen one that's like at Manchester's is manchestercc.edu. I've also seen macc.edu for Manchester. So you might have a couple of vanity email addresses. They both will be forwarded initially, but unfortunately they don't both have the same lifespan to them. And the difference really is that the ComNet email addresses the system controls. So in Hartford, there's a server that controls that naming for the ComNet. And we can forward those email addresses really indefinitely. For years, we can forward them if we want to. The vanity email addresses are associated with your individual websites. So your Quinnebog.edu or Asnuntuck or whatever. Those we don't have control over. In fact, Educause owns them, and Educause wants to take them back. And when the Board of Regents signed that official documentation, and I think it was fall of 2021, that started a clock ticking with Educause to say, okay, we will give you ctstate.edu as a website domain, but you can't keep those other 12. And every couple of months, I request an extension with Educause. Email them and say, we're not ready yet. We need some more time. That next deadline comes up again at the end of June of this year of 2024. And I will, once again, I'll email them and say, we need more time. At some point, though, we won't be able to get any more extensions, and Educause is going to take back those 12 legacy websites. And when they do that, these vanity emails will go away. There will be no option to forward emails to them because they won't exist anymore once the websites don't exist anymore. So what I've been advising to people is that when you do get migrated over to the new email address, and that should be within the next couple of months or so, you'll get a lot of communication before you do though. So don't worry, it won't be a surprise to you. But when you do get the new ctstate.edu email address, concentrate on getting rid of references to those vanity email addresses. You might have print publications with those on them. They might be on your website or on published directories. You might have subscribed to services, magazines, white papers, things like that with that email address. And ultimately, both of them will go away. We'll all just be using ctstate.edu. But like I say, we have a lot longer time with the ComNet one than we do with those vanity email addresses. So really that's the major plan. That's, I think, some of the rumors that started about the emails going away sooner than we anticipated is in reference to those vanity email addresses. So that really ends the presentation I have. I just want to show you examples of them. And I would assume there's going to be a lot of questions. So I'll open it up to questions now.
Oh, we have questions already. Nicola, you're up first.
Thank you so much for this. I think it definitely helps alleviate some fears. If I may, please request, because I heard you say that you are going to be migrating us over in the next few months. Could it please not coincide just prior to finals and maybe not around graduation ceremonies, maybe just right after? That would be really fabulous.
So we have we have what they call a maintenance calendar, which has blackout weeks, and finals is one of those weeks. So is the first week, the first 2 weeks really of any semester. The week before and the first week of are also blackout weeks. So migrations should not be occurring during that time. That's probably a cleanup time. Unfortunately, it is going to be a long migration process where we're going to be moving individuals and devices in batches. And we haven't really determined yet the size of those batches, but the entire migration process is going to go on for months.
Thank you. Mayor Dodd.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you for the good news about the changeover. My concern is, and I don't have the concern for me, because if anybody shows up with my name, ever employed by the system, I would buy dinner for that person and for probably for weeks to come. But what about, I mean, the students? If the students have Jared Borick, faculty, and Jared Borick faculty too, and they want to send an email right away or communicate, and they forget the number, they basically send it. I can imagine the headache for the main Jared first one, and so on. So have you thought about that? Thanks.
Yeah, so a couple of things we're going to do to help kind of mitigate that. For one thing, we are going to have a lookup tool for the student. So when the student gets approved and they get that letter that says, here's your login, here's your email address, there's going to be a lookup tool. So let's say, I forgot what that is. They're going to go there and it will tell them what their email address is, if it has a number after it or something like that. The other thing we're going to do is, similar to what the universities do, if somebody is a student, it'll say that on their display name. So if it'll say, if you've ever gotten an email from like an Eastern or a Western student, it'll have their display name and then in parentheses, it'll say student after that. So you will automatically be able to see that, I'm emailing a student, or I got an email from a student. And the third thing that we've talked about, but we haven't fully implemented yet, is a priority for who gets the full name and who has to have a digit. So I think the priority will be that faculty, staff get priority with the full name, and then if it's a conflict, student would get the number as we migrate. And we'd obviously take examples if that didn't make sense, we could manually change it. So, and this will also keep the system that we have where students and faculty and staff can change their preferred first name. That will stay. That whole process and that whole system will be migrated over intact.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
And one more thing to say about students, I didn't mention the presentation, but students don't have vanity email addresses. So that's one thing they don't have to worry about that for them. So that's only faculty and staff that have to worry about that.
Chair,
Okay.
I have a question as well. I first read about this recently when our IT office sent out a notification, I think the other day. They had mentioned that students currently who have the student@ComNet address, they're basically going to have the same email addresses we have. So will this designation of student in their name, is that going to be the only way that we'll know if we're emailing someone who has the same name as a faculty versus a student name? That'll, so it won't be, it'll be the exact same email setup then going
Right.
forward?
Yes. Yeah. So we'll no longer be, you'll no longer be able to tell visually like that, like you can now. Because students always have those number sequences and it, like say at student.com, yeah, it'll be the same format. You'll only have that. That's why we're asking for that display name. That's one of the big reasons, because we want to make sure we don't increase the amount of mistakes. And I've done it before where you mean to send it to staff member John Smith, but you sent it to student John Smith.
Right.
And hopefully that was an innocuous email where you're just asking, you want to meet up for lunch, and you weren't sending, some financial information or something like that.
Yes, that is definitely, especially I work in financial aid, so that is definitely a big concern there. And will that mean if you didn't know someone's name but you knew their ID number, you could just do their ID number at ComNet? Will that no longer be an option either? Then
Right.
just okay.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah. So we're and they're merging the ID numbers with the email address. So now students just need to remember the email address. They don't need to remember 2 logins. Everything will be by their email address. There will be that NetID will still exist in places where like financial aid uses that to look up unique students, but they no longer have to memorize what, that number for logins and things like that.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Sarah. Sarah, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. So students, although they don't have vanity emails, they will be going through a similar migration. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Because their emails can be forwarded, I'm hoping this is a non-issue. Although I don't use this myself, many faculty do use Blackboard or software packages where students have to use their email to sign up. And will this affect that when there's a migration and when these student emails eventually shut down, like in the middle of the semester? Has anybody kind of thought about what that will be like?
Yes. Yeah, there are several different, for any software that we own and manage, there have been committees that have been meeting for over a year now, planning for this. Things like Blackboard, Simplicity, any of those enterprise-wide applications.
No,
If it's not something we own, like it might be something that through a textbook or something like that, they sign up for with their email address, the emails will still be forwarded. So those should still work, but we'll have to examine case by case if there was a problem with the forwarding emails. But so far in all of our testing and in all of the different groups that are meeting, they haven't come upon that.
Okay, yeah, because it was the latter that was my concern. I mean, I assumed you guys had Blackboard under control, but it's fairly common for faculty to use these secondary softwares.
Third party. Yeah.
Third party, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. And I just want to make sure that that was taken into account because it could really impact the students if all of a sudden there was a meltdown in the middle of the semester for some reason.
Yeah, yeah, and I use them too when I taught. I used it was called, but it was basically a programming sandbox that students could log into, and I think that when we're right now they're in what's called the pre-pilot migration, which they're moving IT over. The next phase is going to be the pilot migration, and there's going to be faculty in that pilot migration. So we're going to ask as the faculty test that stuff to see if there's going to be any issues there, and if there are, we'll address it. We'll get on top.
Yeah, because I think this will be an area of anxiety for faculty once they start to be more aware of this coming. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Peter and then Eileen.
Yeah, this is actually very helpful. This may be the stupid question of the day. It's late Friday, so anyway, I'll do my best to describe it. So I have a lot of contacts with employers, different groups and that type of thing. I guess I'm wondering how proactive to be, with that. So in other words, if somebody sends, I use my vanity, I take out the ComNet, right? So if I have somebody contact me through that and I hit reply, and this is already after the migration, so it's the CT, .edu email address. If they reply back to me, does that, if they had subsequent contacts with me, would it automatically default to the CT EDU, or would it go back to my vanity? I guess I'm just trying to get a sense on, especially given it's going to go away. I want to know if I want to
Yeah.
address that up front or not. So
that actually might be one of the smartest questions of the day,
Really?
because that's something that I've been giving a lot of thought to. So you're right, and to answer part of that, if they're doing a reply, just a general reply, by default it should be coming to your ComNet email address. However, if they've manually typed in your email address, then they might have typed in the vanity one, and if they did that, it's saved on their computer, on their Outlook or their Google Gmail or Yahoo or whatever. And that's something that we won't be able to help with, actually. The reason for that is it's on their computer, right? We don't have any control over that. So once I got migrated over, one of the things I started thinking about was, okay, what are these outside entities that I email all the time that might have had that saved? And I've notified them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
Hey, you might want to go in and delete your saved email settings because this particular email is going away.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen.
Hi, Jared, thanks for this information. I think you and I have talked a little bit about the library resources and how many of them are verified for students via their email. So as an example, like New York Times Online utilizes email addresses to register for that content and be able to access it. So that's not the only one that we have, but we have several. So I'm hoping I can work with you to make sure that as this rolls out, we can ensure that no one loses access to those resources that they're used to having.
Yeah, and we definitely want to get together with that. I know that we tested in our application testing, we tested a lot of them, but not all of them. It was impossible to test every one. And for all your subscription services, anything that was linked to the Active Directory, we'll take a look at it, and I'll help you out with that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Mehrdad, is your hand up again or still?
No, I just have one more quick question, and
Okay.
a yes or no would suffice, just to satisfy my OCD. When we sign up for like Adobe, to access the full package or the Office 365, we can use the new email address, right?
Once you've been migrated over, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And our last question today comes from Bonnie.
Hi, Jared. My question is in regards to how quickly are we going to be able to issue the new emails out? Right now in the process, if a student registers today for a particular course, a first-time student, they're given a banner ID on the spot of registration. And then their secondary ComNet or vanity email is given to them after the overnight process. Is this new email going to be given immediately upon registration when they do that formulation, or is there going to be a wait process of the overnight before being able to be given that new CT State EDU?
There is a group that is currently figuring this out. They're going to have a date where from this date forward, any new student is going to be told, this is your login, this is your email. And I think they're tentatively looking at, I think, some date in March. But they want to make sure that any fall students, when they register, will get the new information. And that way we don't have to change or migrate anybody who has never even logged in yet. So, but that group is working on that, and I don't have specifics because I haven't been in every one of their meetings. But I know there's actually two groups, one for the credit side and one for the non-credit side that is working on this.
That process is going to be really important, especially for onboarding.
Yeah.
So I'm very concerned about that because there's a lot of questions already of students coming in, and that clarity of the Vanity and the ComNet emails is a huge issue. So if any information in that aspect can be shared, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yep, I will. As soon as I know, I will share.
Okay. Jared, thank you very much for coming. This was already on our radar. As you know, I had reached out with some of the more outrageous rumors that were circulating. So we appreciate your the clarity that you've brought and hearing our questions and concerns.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. All right, folks, we are now moving on to general orders. Sarah Perez, are you here? There you are. Okay. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for having me. We sent out earlier this week, we sent out a copy of the bylaws, the updates that we're making. There was a comment from Alan, and we can address that when we get down to elections. So what I would like to do right now is, by the direction of the bylaws committee, I would like to make a motion to adopt the following revision of the bylaws. Should I pull it up on my screen or?
Is it the same language that you sent for the February meeting?
Yes, this is for executive sessions. It's under section 8, letter H.
If you have it handy to pull up, then please do.
Sarah, would you like me to pull it up? I've got it ready.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. Sorry. And
Thank
so
you, Roberta.
the first motion I'd like to make is to to adopt the following revisions to section 8, letter H for executive sessions. An executive session may be called by the executive council or by majority vote of the Senate. Only elected senators may attend and participate, with the exception of the ex officio member or members who may be invited to participate. Executive sessions will not be video recorded. The outcome of the executive session shall be reported in the minutes.
Is there a second to the motion?
Motion to second, Roberta.
Any discussion? Miguel.
I have a question in terms of, I'm a little concerned there's no explicit language that prohibits voting in executive session. It's generally understood that any vote has to be taken in public, but it might be worth adding a sentence to say all votes shall be taken outside of executive session, because that's standard protocol. And I think we want to be explicit about that.
This is Roberta. Sarah, would you be amenable to that friendly addition?
Yes.
The motion is amended. Any further discussion?
Ask one more question. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Miguel, can you just give me that phrase one more time, please?
Votes shall be taken outside of executive session.
And I have one more quick question. Just
Okay.
regarding the outcome of executive session, the last sentence, the outcome of executive session shall be reported in the minutes. I'm a little concerned about that language because executive session is executive session for a reason, and discussions are considered confidential within the confines of that, which is why you can't have a vote. So I'm just wondering whether you want to change the word outcome.
Miguel, actually, the outcome piece was supposed to refer to the vote. So the new sentence that you have given us can replace that last sentence.
Okay.
So just for clarity and to have it captured,
Yeah, I'll amend my motion.
There we go. Thank you.
All right, yeah, okay, that makes more sense to me now. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have this set up.
Thank you, Roberta.
Miguel, do you have another question? You just popped up with your hand again.
No, I was taking it down. Sorry. It's down.
Oh,
I'm good.
all right, very good. We have a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor of adopting this addition to the bylaws, please raise your hand. All those in favor? John? Do we have all the votes, John?
Well, we're currently at 27. Yeah, it's 27 is stable.
27 in favor. Oh, 28. Add me, John. Sorry.
28.
There you go. 28. All right, everyone lower your hands. Everyone lower your hands.
I think that's 29. Yeah, I was gonna say Nicola just
It was
got her hand
29
up.
in the end.
29. My hand didn't go up for some reason, then I caught it at the end. It's 29.
Okay, thank you for catching that. Any opposed? Any opposed? Geneva, are you opposed?
I was trying to put my
Just
hand
put it
back down
Okay,
because
no worries.
I
Thank you.
finally got it now.
There we go. We have no opposed. Any abstentions? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Sarah and Roberta. Roberta, can you bring up the language on term lengths? Sarah, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the following revision for Section 3, Letter A, terms. Terms for senators shall be for 3 years. Senators may serve a maximum of 2 consecutive terms. Special elections due to a midterm vacancy shall count as 1 full term. To create staggered terms, the following election cycles will be established. Inaugural faculty senators shall serve an initial term beginning January 2023 and expiring at the close of the academic year, May 2025. Inaugural staff senators shall serve an initial term beginning January 2023 and expiring at the close of the academic year, May 2026. Inaugural members at large senators shall serve an initial term beginning January 2023 and expiring at the close of the academic year for May 2026. Faculty, staff, and members at large will henceforth continue election cycles at their home campus following the staggered terms per above. Student senators shall be 1 academic year in length.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Who was the second?
Peter Bennett.
Peter, thank you. Questions? Mike Stefanowicz?
Yes, if I'm understanding this correctly, you're extending the terms that staff and at-large members were elected for by a year or 2. However, when those elections occurred for January 2023, everybody who was elected through May of this term, through May of 24. So I don't know if you can retroactively change the term someone was elected to, if I'm understanding.
You are understanding that is the intent. And Sarah, correct me if I'm not summarizing this accurately, but any person can choose to step down in May, and we will hold an election for their position, Mike. most of the people have indicated they would be willing to serve their extended. So they were given the option.
Right. However, there may be staff folks who were not elected for January 23 who wish to now run. And there's going to be no election for staff senators broadly. In other words, when the elections occurred, everybody was elected for 18 months. And I think you could have folks reelected to 1, 2, and 3-year terms. But I don't think parliamentarily, whatever that word is, you can just extend someone's term. It's like saying that, I don't know, a president was elected for 4 years, but he's going to stay for 6. I understand the concept, and I understand why you'd want to do it. I just don't know if that's appropriate or allowed.
Okay, we're going to continue through gather the questions and concerns. Miguel?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is Roberta said she can't raise her hand, and I guess she wanted to raise her hand. Or she wants to raise her hand. Also, for 3A13, I believe there's a typo that's supposed to be May 2027, what is now being highlighted and changed, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. I actually share Mike's concern regarding the ethics of unilaterally changing a term in the middle of a term. People were elected, elections were held, elections were publicized. This is going to be for X amount of time. And I would support what Mike said, that I understand the need to stagger the terms. I totally get that. But I would suggest that there be an election for all seats, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, however that's divided, if we go with 3-year terms. The last point that I wanted to make is I thank the committee for their work in putting their poll out. I voted for 2 years. I think 3 years is a very long term. I understand the usefulness of institutional knowledge and having experience in getting on board. But I think when you're asking people to commit in terms of whether it's veteran faculty, AR time, whether in terms of staff and post-17 faculty, a 3-year commitment is a long time. I think a 2-year commitment is palatable. I think 3 years is concerning, and I think we're going to scare some people away. My personal opinion on that. And I know there was a poll, but that's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Roberta, since you can't raise your hand, I'm just going to insert you here.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out the 2027 for number 3, that was a typo on my part.
Okay, thank you. Alan.
Thanks, Elle. Excuse me. Yeah, well, I had several things. One was the May 2027, because otherwise you would not have actual staggered terms. I kind of resonate with Miguel and Mike's point about the fact that, we were elected to 1.5-year terms. Now campuses would have the option of replacing somebody mid-term. They could do that, and I think that can be done by a simple majority vote. So if a campus wanted to replace a senator in any of these 3 cohorts, they would be able to do so. But I do have, some reservations about that. I also have reservations about the term limits, the consecutive terms. So even though we're saying that faculty senators their first term would be 2.5 years, they would only therefore be able to serve 1 additional term, whereas that would be extended for staff and at-large senators an additional year or 2. So yeah, those are my concerns and reservations about the current language.
Thank you.
I may come back, but that's all for now.
This is Roberta. I can't raise my hand.
Go ahead,
I can
Roberta.
raise it this way. So in light of what some of the concerns are, Are we thinking that it's more appropriate for everyone to end the term at the end of this year, like we had initially been elected for, and then actually change the staggered terms for this next election? So this spring, May election, people will be elected for the staggered term. So one group will be elected for 1 year, another for 2 years, another for 3 years, and then those would continue on. Is that what I'm hearing?
That would make sense to me in terms of the I think the most ethical thing to do, given how people were elected. But I still think we need to have a broader discussion here about 2 years versus 3 years.
Alan and then Nicola.
Thanks. Yes, I had also voted for the 2-year term, but I see the logic of wanting to have the 3 years, wanting to have the institutional memory. And so I'm not opposed to that. I would support the 3-year terms. But I think that Roberta's suggestion resonates, that everyone is up for re-election this April, actually. And the language would be different, right? So we'd have to state that faculty be elected for 1 year, staff for 2, at large for 3, if that's what we choose. And then subsequent to that election, all terms will be for 3 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Peter?
Yeah, I was just going to agree with that as well. That makes sense to me. So.
Nick and John, your hands were up at one. Okay, John, your hand's up now. John?
Sorry, I keep going back and forth on whether or not my question is going to be helpful or not. We did have some discussion in a previous meeting about the time frame that we have for running elections. So I'm wondering what this timeline would do for running elections in May. And has any work been done to move towards running elections in May, or is that just an extra complication for staggering of the terms? And then second kind of question to that is, should we just look to amend the motion right now to deal with just the first issue of whether or not elections should run in May, and then we can come to the second issue of the length of term?
So first, the elections have to happen in April, and for this year, they have to happen in April because they go into effect for May. In May, we have to vote for the executive council. Based on the discussion that we're having, the person who made the motion and seconded will have to decide if they continue to hold that motion. And then there are hands, Alan and then Nicola.
Yeah, I was just going to say that in terms of these elections, these are not anything that we as a body have to hold. These will just be held on the campuses, right? So
these are campus elections administered by the campuses.
Right. So I would just call a faculty meeting or faculty staff council meeting, and on the agenda would be election of senators, and so it's people would know in advance, and that could easily be accomplished by April 30th.
Nick?
I'm wondering if it would be prudent to actually just hold a vote on 2-year term versus 3-year terms, and then debate the language on how we're going to have when the votes will happen, and then this language that is being presented to us now.
Well, right now we have a motion and a second, and we're discussing the motion on the floor.
So I can withdraw my motion if it would be more helpful to talk about 2 versus 3, and then we can come back to this to talk about timing.
Roberta, are you willing to withdraw your second? Roberta, you may be on mute.
I believe somebody else seconded this.
Yeah, I believe I seconded it.
Oh, thank you, Peter. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I'm willing to withdraw my second. Yes.
Okay. All right, then we do not have any motion on the floor at the moment. Is there a motion? Alan?
I would like to move that
Speak slowly so that we get it captured.
I would like to move that the regular term for senators be 2 years, with the acknowledgement that terms beginning with the 2024-25 academic year may not all be 2 years. But regular terms once rotation is established.
Okay. The motion is regular terms for senators will be 2 years, with the acknowledgement that terms beginning the 24-25 academic year may not all be 2 years.
Right. If we're trying to establish rotating terms.
Staggered.
So staggered. Yes.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second? Nick, was that a second?
Yeah, it's Nicholas seconding.
Nick seconded. Okay. And you were up, Nick. Did you put your hand down? You did. Okay. Roberta and then Bonnie.
Would you like for me to put up the 2-year proposal that we had put together earlier?
Do we, if you have that language?
I do.
Great. Thank you.
So this is on this middle column. Okay. Is based on a 2-year term. And if I heard the motion correctly, we'll need to change this terminology for full number 1 and 2 to change the years so that they will cycle with a new election starting this April, and then they will cycle the staggered terms. Half will be for a year, and then half will be for 2 years.
Yes, that's what we talked about previously. Yep.
So would you like me to address what we initially came up with, Elle?
Sure.
If everyone's comfortable with that? Okay, so initially when we were first discussing a 2-year term, the committee came up with this language that indicates the highlights are everyone has a 2-year term. There's a maximum of 3 consecutive terms. Any special elections due to midterm vacancy would count as 1 full term. And then to create the staggered terms and equitable distribution between small and larger campuses, we came up with this cycle. The inaugural staff senators would serve an initial term beginning, January 23 until this year for 24-25. And then faculty senators, we broke up the faculty as the first 6 campuses in alphabetical order. So faculty senators from the first 6 campuses would be as Nantucket, Capital, Gateway, Housatonic, Manchester, and Middlesex. They would serve an initial term between January 23 and expire at the close of 23-24. And then the inaugural faculty senators from the second 6 campuses, which would be Naugatuck, Northwestern, Norwalk, Quinebaug, Three Rivers, and Tunxus, their term would end 24-25. And then the members at large would expire at the end of this year. So
this language will have to be adjusted.
It would, yeah.
To reflect the years.
Yeah, the years would need to be adjusted, but in essence, the members at large would go off first, and half of the faculty, and then the half of the faculty and the staff would go off on the second year.
Bonnie.
Just a point of clarification. I want to make sure that one, that if we're being sent something to vote upon and a decision is being made based upon that vote, are we now saying that that voting mechanism is not going to have any weight to the decisions that we're making because we are now at Senate and we're going to change that vote for the things that we are planning for? Like, we voted, right? Sarah sent out and the committee sent out a poll in regards to that. They made a decision based upon that poll for this particular item on the terms. Are we not saying that that was weighted enough to make another vote about the terms that were collected and agreed upon?
I think, if I may, I'm sorry, other people have their hands up.
Well, I want to address Bonnie's question, but I'm not sure I understand it yet.
So let me see if I can clarify. So the committee sent out a poll for us to make a decision in regards to the terms in which we want to this particular item to be, either whether it be second term, two-year term, or a 3-year term. Based on the outcome of that poll, the committee made a decision, right, to say that the outcome was going to be a 3-year term, and that's what we are now kind of making some decisions about, pushing it forward. But what I'm hearing now is that we're going to revote and change it to a 2-year term. So are we vetoing the polls that are being sent to us to vote upon that are helping our subcommittees to make decisions, is basically what I'm saying.
Well, the original, that poll, and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but that poll was a straw poll to get a sense of what the body was thinking, where folks were leading. And I think to that point, Bonnie, it was quite evenly divided. In fact, 2-year terms edged out 3-year terms until we started looking at the comments that people gave us. And then that moved it very clearly. Sarah, am I recalling that correctly?
Yes.
So it wasn't it wasn't a vote, it was a straw poll, and I apologize if we did not make that clear.
It just seemed like that decision, the poll came out, and then the decision that we were going to be a 3-year term, that verbiage came out. So I want to make sure that we don't incorrectly leave that poll out.
We aren't ignoring the information that poll gave us, but it wasn't a vote. It was a straw poll to collect information. However, I do think you're making an important point, Bonnie, and that is the bylaws folks spent a lot of time not just collecting a poll, but looking at the comments and trying to delve more deeply into this. And I think that it is warranted to remind Senate of that.
Thank you, because that's exactly the point.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it took me a minute to get where you were. Jeremy?
So essentially, when it comes to the motion that was beginning to be attempted to be made, I think what we should
The original?
No, the one that about the term lengths that we were hoping to vote on, that we should try to, for now, focus on perhaps just the exact number of years for term length and the number of consecutive terms that may be served. The staggering, let's put that on hold as part of because we were kind of hammering out the wording of what the motion would be so that we all clearly knew what we were voting on. For clarity, when we're talking about what will eventually be regular terms, regardless, once the staggering has all been taken care of, the regular terms forever going forward, and in addition, instead of posing the motion, I would suggest is like somebody saying I so move that it's 2 years. Could we have a vote that is we posit 2 years, 3 consecutive terms versus 3 years, 2 consecutive terms, and we vote in that manner rather than a yes or a no, it's still a dual choice. It's either one or the other, and we can show of hands for either choice and leave it at that. We'll handle the staggering separately. Is that possible?
It might be possible, except that we have a motion and a second on the floor, and we have to vote on this motion unless the motion is withdrawn.
True.
All right, John and then Alan. John, you're on mute.
I clicked the hand instead of the mic.
You did.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I'm just rising to speak for 3-year terms instead of 2-year terms, though I understand and recognize some of the good reasons to host 2-year terms. I'm interested to think about the dynamics that 2-year terms would have on smaller campuses, and what that might play with the number of folks that are able to serve. I know there's been some interesting discussion about that, and also addressing the ability for senators to serve a little bit longer for continuity through projects that are, multi-year projects, or, not losing that brain drain as quickly.
Thank you, John. Next up is Alan and then Miguel.
I guess I was going to say I would accept a friendly amendment. I mean, my intent was to do what was just suggested, was to choose between 2 and 3 years, and just to get clarity from the Senate on that. But I don't want to include the concept of term limits because I'm not necessarily in support of that. So,
thank you, Alan. Miguel?
Yeah, thanks, Al. So I think we have 3 different issues here, and I'm going to suggest a potential path that I think may help provide clarity, recognizing not only what Sarah said, but also what Jeremy alluded to. I'm going to suggest that we have 3 separate votes, and that we amend the motion. I think that we should have a vote on simply 2-year versus 3-year term. That's number 1. I think we should have a second vote on term limits or no term limits, number 2. And number 3, I think we should have and then a staggering vote, just to clarify that language. But I think that trying to, to Jeremy's point, trying to do sort of the different things all the way, it doesn't make sense. I think breaking it up, let's get clarity on each issue. And to Bonnie's point, the straw poll absolutely was to help the committee in its work, and the committee did a lot of work. But I also think it's actually a very interesting example of why we don't allow proxy voting, because I know this discussion is helping me in my thinking, and I suspect it's probably helping others in their thinking. And I think that's why it's so important to have the discussion before you have a final vote on anything. So to me, this is exactly the way the process is supposed to work. You develop language, you present the language, and then you have a discussion at the full Senate.
Miguel, are you suggesting this is democracy at work?
Oh, I don't know that I would go that far. I mean, I'm a personal fan of dictatorship, but that's a separate issue.
I happen to know you are not. And I did actually put my hand up, and I'm going to call upon myself rather than turn the meeting over to one of the vice presidents. I want to speak on the issue of 3-year term limits. Yes, we are asking for a significant commitment, but I think we have all seen that standing up a new college senate is a lot of work. And I think there are pros and cons for both 2 and 3-year terms, but we have 3 campus representatives from each campus, and this permits one person to rotate off or on from each campus. It is critical to the institutional memory and the continuity of the work that we are doing. I am even concerned about losing all of the faculty in one fell swoop, and then all of the staff. In my ideal world, we would break it down and divide by, so that we are rotating 1/3 off in each for all 3 categories. The work that we are starting to do the processes that we are starting to build. Bonnie talked about the need for yet another process, and we know we haven't identified them all, and we're really working hard to do that. And today, prior to this meeting, I got a little pissy with Peter in asking a question because there is just so much work to do. And I apologize for that, Peter. Your point is well taken. We need the institutional memory. I also think that term limits harm small campuses disproportionately. Where we have a limited number of faculty and a limited number of staff, and people get in a room and say, okay, I'm willing to work on this thing, and you need to work on that thing. And we need structures in place that permit our campuses and empower our campuses to operate their shared governance in the ways that is best for them. And we need to maintain our institutional memory and the integrity of the work that we are doing. And I hereby surrender the floor. And I believe the next hand is Roberta.
Thank you, Al. I just wanted to respond to Alan, and I highlighted on the initial bylaws that last year when we voted in our bylaws, it had said that senators, or rather representatives, is the language we used last time around, may serve a maximum of 3 consecutive terms, and that was based on a 2-year term. So it would have been 6 years, and that's consecutive, and that there's no reason why someone could do a couple of years and then, rerun for that position if they wanted to.
Alan.
Thanks. So Miguel suggested a friendly amendment, which I would like to accept if the person who seconded my motion would also accept it. And that is that the motion is that we would have 3 votes, the first vote being to determine term lengths, the second vote being to determine term limits, and the third to establish staggering of terms.
Okay. Nicola, you seconded that. You're
Yes.
amenable. Thank you.
I am.
So on the issue of terms, what is the motion? What is
Motion
the
is for
motion?
2-year terms. Yeah.
The motion is for 2-year terms. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Oh, Sarah, are you voting or do you have a question?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So if we're voting on 2-year terms, is this with the, is this part of it that we would all stop this May and have brand new elections going forward? Everybody has that hard May 2024 deadline, and then we start with new elections.
Yes,
that's
Sarah,
the third
I think
question.
we're accepting Mike Stefanowicz's opening statement as influential and relevant. Yes. So if you're voting yes on 2-year terms, please raise your hand now. If you vote yes on 2-year terms, please raise your hand now.
All right, so it looks like we're at 12.
We're at 12. Thank you very much, sir. Please lower your hands. If you oppose 2-year terms, please raise your hand. If you oppose 2-year terms, please raise your hand. Has it stabilized, John?
Yeah, it looks like we're at 14.
Thank you. Lower your hands. Please lower your hands. Any abstentions? Any abstentions? We have 2. Is that right, John?
That's what I see.
Okay. The motion fails. Is there a motion for 3-year terms?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that motion, Al.
Oh, I do not know who was talking.
Oh, it's there, sorry.
There's
You're
my
going way too fast for all this complicated stuff in the notes.
Yeah, who made the motion?
Peter Bennett.
Peter, thank you. And Peter, your motion is for 2-year term, 3-year terms?
3-year terms, yes.
3-year terms. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
All right, just
Sarah?
to clarify again, that's with ending in May 2024 with new elections, with the new election cycle.
Yes, ma'am. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
All right, we're at 16.
We're at 16. We have 16 yeses. Go ahead and lower your hands, folks. All those opposed? All those opposed, raise your hand. Has the vote stabilized, John?
Yeah, it looks like we're at 9.
We're at 9. Okay. Go ahead and lower your hands. There we go. And abstentions? Abstentions?
I see 2.
Okay. The motion carries. We have 3-year terms, folks. Thank you very much. We will need to adjust our agenda either by extending our time or tabling some issues, folks. We do need to get through this in order for us to begin elections. So this is critical in our timing. Moving on to term limits. Is there a motion regarding term limits?
Al, can we hold on a second for the minutes?
Yes. Yes.
So this is, oh boy, good luck to the next person who does this job. So Senator Garcia made a motion to split the things 3 different ways. That was a friendly amendment, which was accepted by Alan and Nicola, but then we had a vote on 2-year terms, but nobody, that was, the whole concept was brought forward with a friendly amendment. So why did we have Senator Bennett motion for 3-year terms when it was a friendly amendment to adjust all 3 of the votes into all 3 of the concepts into 3 different votes? It's not adding up in the minutes.
I think that I think the motion, Brian, that Alan initially made should have been withdrawn, and then either Alan or Miguel make another motion to have 3 separate votes, in my opinion.
The motion that I accepted was to have a vote to determine whether terms would be 2 or 3 years. So we needed to have actually 2 votes in order to establish that, right? Because the 2-year terms failed. It didn't necessarily mean that the 3-year terms
would prevail.
Prevail.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the 3-year term need to be introduced. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
It was. I think that would be included in the.
Okay. We are off on a rabbit hole with the side part of the minutes menu. So just trying to capture all of this.
Okay, thank you. So now we are moving on to the second part of this, which is term limits. Is there a motion to either use or not use term limits? Roberta.
I move that we instill term limits.
Instill, because they're already there.
Well, right now, we already have term limits for 2 years. That we actually, let me correct myself. Right now, we say that individuals may serve a maximum of 3 consecutive terms. If we are doing, and I think that for a 3-year term, I think 2 consecutive terms is enough. So I would move that we allow for 2 consecutive terms, given the fact that we're doing 3-year terms.
So your motion is we allow 2 consecutive terms.
Yes.
Alan, is that a second?
It's a second with a request of Roberta. Could we say 2 consecutive 3-year terms? Because when we get to staggering,
Sure.
we're going to have 1 and 2-year terms.
Yeah, I'm open to that, of course.
Potentially.
I would accept that, yes.
Okay,
Real
then
quick, thank you.
I second the motion as amended.
So the motion as amended is we allow 2 consecutive 3-year terms. The motion was made by Roberta and seconded by Alan. Brian, you have a question?
No, sorry. I think I was just trying to get everybody's attention to stop for a second.
Okay, very good.
We're good.
Miguel.
Yeah, I think with that last piece, you're going to have a problem because if you have a vacancy, the language says that the person who shall serve a partial term, not because of a staggered term, but a partial term to fill a vacancy is considered a full term, and that would not be a 3-year term, but it is considered a full term. So I would actually suggest that you strike the 3-year language for clarity.
Well, the issue is going to be when we get to staggering and then we're electing some people for 1 year. So some people are only going to be able to serve 4 years, others are going to serve 6 years.
I understand the intent. And so what my experience has been for situations like this is what you have to do is you have to create transitional language from a static model to a staggered model that will apply only for the initial period of the first set of staggering. After that, it becomes regular language.
Well, no, if I'm sorry. If a person filling a vacancy is considered a full term, then that is a 3-year term, even if they're not in that seat. That person is not in that seat for 3 years.
So you're basing it on the seat, not the person. I think okay, so I'll just leave it at this because I don't want to belabor the point. I'm not sure that that's entirely clear, and I think it could be open to interpretation by different people. But if nobody else has a concern about it, it's me being overly parliamentarian. So
Thank you, Miguel. Jeremy.
I do see, Miguel, what you are saying, and when it comes to what Alan is saying, with so in the scenario where we have someone stepping down from a senatorial position and a new person is elected, if we have the language stating that the terms will always be 3 years, and we vote that into being, what that effectively does is make that replacement person voted in possibly at any time on an off, they're not on the same timeline as the staggering. And so they would start their first 3-year term, regardless of when the staggering happens. And then they would serve another possible 3-year term or anything like that. And enough time going by, we would lose the regularity of the staggering in that scenario. In the scenario where we just state that they are able to serve only 2 terms and that whatever partial term they fill counts as a full term, then we maintain the calendar of staggering that we established, even though we haven't voted on that part yet. So that's the concern there. If that is okay with everybody, then we can state, that every term will always ever be 3 years, regardless if you've been voted in as a replacement after someone served a year and a half or something. So just pointing that out, that will become a thing.
What if we move, Miguel's, what if we shift it to the seat? If we shift it to the position, how does that change the motion? Alan, does it? Because you had intent that it is not clear if you were talking about an individual or a.
Well, so Miguel, I think that you're basically going to propose, when we get to the vote on staggering, you're going to propose language that will clarify that those 1 and 2 year terms do not count towards term limits? Is that the language you would include?
Not, I hadn't gone that far. I'm just, there, when you move to a staggering model, right, there's two pieces, because you have people who are going to be serving 1 year terms, 2 year terms, and 3 year terms, right? Over the course of the first 3 years, right? And then you're going to have let me take a step back. You're going to have an annual election every year, regardless, right? That has to happen because everything is staggered. Okay. So given that in the first 3 years, you're going to have an annual election, you will have people who are elected for 1 year in the first year, people elected to 2 in the second year. You will have seats that are going to be 1 year long, 2 years long, and 3 years long, right? So after the third year, at that point, everybody should be on a 3-year cycle. So it's going to matter less, and we're only going to have vacancies. So I'm just trying to, as simple as possible, which of course it's never simple, right? Or as simply as possible, come up with the language to solve the bridge problem over the next 3 years.
So my concern is, we were talking about faculty being the first ones to cycle off. So you're basically saying that all of the faculty senators, if we don't specify in some way, saying basically all of the faculty senators can only serve 4 years.
That's not what's being said.
Hold on.
Well,
hold on.
because if
We're gonna go
faculty are
back-
going to be
we're gonna
elected
go back
for
to
1
raising-
year,
We're going to go back to raising hands. Because folks are now raising hands.
Okay.
Roberta and then John.
I do agree with Miguel. We've written enough bylaws together. I agree with him that I don't believe we need to say the 3-year addition in the initial term for consecutive terms. I think it should still remain as they may serve a maximum of, I think we said it was 3 consecutive terms.
2.
2 consecutive terms? Okay, thank you. I apologize. And leave it at that. No one is saying that the 1 year, 2 year, and 3 year term is going to be, we haven't even gotten to that yet. We're not, I don't want to assume that that next level of terms to create the staggered, we haven't really addressed how we're going to consider those staggered terms. We're saying that if I were to resign tomorrow, then someone from my institution would need to fill in for the remainder of my term. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about a midterm.
But isn't that language already there? That's, I guess, my point.
Hold on, because Roberta, if you resign tomorrow and somebody fills the next 60 days of your term, that counts as a full term.
Yep.
And that is, okay, I just want to get that. John and then Jeremy.
Yeah, 2 quick points. One, to Alan's point, with election for faculty, we won't lose all faculty because at-large consists of staff and faculty. So
we lose all, but John, an important caveat to that is all elected faculty, not the at-large. Only the elected faculty representatives serve on the council of faculty. So that's a 100% turnover. As is the student services. It is the elected student service professional staff. That's 100% turnover if we elect by position.
That might be the existing case, and that might be a reason for us to revisit the members of faculty or staff that are at large elected positions and their role on the council, and I might consider treating those separately.
Roberta, is your hand up again or still?
It is.
Okay.
We don't necessarily have, we're not married to the order in which folks are going to go off, in which they're going to go off to create the staggered terms. We can change that. Perhaps we want to do, separate it out so that different institutions based on large, medium, small go out the first year, the second year, the third year, and that's how we're creating the staggered terms. It's just going to be more work for our executive leadership to track those elections as well as the elections committee.
And Jeremy.
As for Alan's point about the senators that would roll off during this transitional period who would end up with perhaps only being able to serve for 4 years going forward. Basically, I think we should, not as part of this motion, but what would solve that is Miguel's concept of the transitional language, where we talk about the initial senators, the faculty senators, beyond them, basically if for those senators that are voted into a 1-year term for the purposes of transition, we would need to specifically state in the bylaws transitional language that would accept them from the 3-year, from the language that stated that a shortened term or a partial term counted as a full term or something along those lines. Like that, I think he's got a great point about that. But what we should do for this motion is just address the original motion of term limits and that language alone. So should we have the term limits and
Alan, you made the motion, sir.
Actually, I think I seconded it with that request. So I would withdraw that request.
Can you withdraw your second so that we can go back to the motion and have it restated?
Yes, I withdraw the second.
Thank you. Who made Roberta, did you make this motion?
I did.
Would you like to restate the motion? Or do you want me to ask for a second for your, we allow two
Brian, could I trouble you to read back the motion?
We allow 2 consecutive 3-year terms.
2 consecutive 3-year terms was the text.
I thought the 3-year was what Alan had asked that I add. So I would just like to say that the motion is that senators serve a maximum of 2 consecutive terms, period.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Miguel?
Yeah, I'm going to oppose the motion. I just only because I know there's a lot of discussion, a lot of thought about term limits. I think that the concerns of the smaller campuses are well founded. And I think that that's important that we recognize that. And I say that coming from the flagship and the largest, right? So I'm going to vote against it because I think that we can solve a lot of problems by simply saying, letting elections be the natural term limit, and not having to come up with a whole bunch of language regarding how many terms or anything or whatever it's going to be.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. Any further discussion? Nicola?
Yeah, I actually feel that term limits are very important. I remember when I was a new faculty person and I came onto a campus and there were people that seemed so well informed and knew exactly what was going on, knew every little, what every initial stood for. And if it came to someone saying, hey, you should run against that person, I would never run against someone that is been here for X number of years and is established in what they're doing. I think by having term limits, we provide a natural turnover for governance. I think it is incredibly important that there is term limits. I guess maybe I'm not fully understanding why we think small colleges are disadvantaged. I mean, if you have one person serving on a committee for 12 years, they're locked up on a committee for 12 years, then no one else is on that campus that has the opportunity. So I'm not exactly sure I follow the argument that we're disadvantaging small campuses with term limits.
Thank you, Nick. John?
Yeah, I want to agree with Nicola. I think that it's a good idea to have a natural break, but the language that we're using of consecutive terms doesn't prohibit someone from coming. I shouldn't say the word but because I'm not disagreeing with Nicola. I would just say my understanding is that after 2 consecutive terms, you need to take a break, but that doesn't preclude you from coming back on and serving again, which allows the smaller campuses to still have representation that's ongoing while still allowing newer additions to faculty or staff be able to participate without feeling like they're running against someone that's been participating for 18 years straight.
Thank you, John. Rhonda, can I go to Roberta first because she is changing her motion? Thank you, Roberta.
Thank you. So I would be amenable to changing the motion, and Miguel, I'm going to ask you to help me with some of the language here because I'm doing it off the cuff. That senators may serve a maximum of 2 consecutive terms, except where in the event a campus is unable to put forth a name of another person. Let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. Don't type yet, Brian. What I want to try to say is that we want to allow the opportunity for those campuses where an election cannot occur to put in another person, that their previous senator could,
John needs to withdraw his second if you're going to adjust.
What if we leave it up to the campus governance bodies? Except where a campus, I mean, you need to tell me that situation, but
yeah, I want to allow for those smaller campuses to be able to make that decision, but I still also agree with Nicola and want those smaller campuses, if there's another person who would like to run after the 2 consecutive terms, that they can. But if that campus if no one is going to run for the position, then that governing body at that institution can put forth the name of the previous senator if they're willing to do a 3rd term. Does that make sense?
You just made an argument for not having term limits.
Oh, I did. That's why I'm going there now. It just took a few minutes to get there. It just took a few minutes. I'm going to withdraw my motion altogether if the person who seconded it is amenable to it.
Who seconded this one?
John.
John, do you want to sponsor the motion because we have lost the maker?
Yeah, I do. I think if we wanted to have a friendly amendment that allowed for an adjustment if someone from a campus ran unopposed and no one else was interested, that might be a caveat that we could add to bylaws, but I still think I want to keep the motion for 2 consecutive terms.
So folks, we may be, Brian, what is quorum? And John, we may have just lost quorum.
Quorum is 19 senators to.
What do we have left, John?
I don't know.
We still have, let's see, what is it? 28.
We do need a motion to extend the meeting, though. We're 5 minutes over.
We're at 37.
No, that 37 is total participation.
You're right. I'm sorry. Hold on.
That's okay. That's okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, we can't take a motion to extend the meeting because we have a motion on the floor.
It's
wow.
Still fun. So again, John, are you? If you're not withdrawing your second, then
we have 27 in the meeting.
I would second John's motion. This is Jeremy. And then after we vote on this, then we'll probably have to vote on whether or not we're extending the meeting, but just in the interest of getting things done.
Yes. Okay.
The vote is still going to be on the original language because that didn't change.
No, we don't have a seconded motion right now. John has made a motion.
I seconded it. Oh, sorry.
Yes, but he didn't fully articulate it. We need it clearly stated.
Sure.
So, John.
2 consecutive. Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Motion is for 2 consecutive terms as a limit.
There we go.
I would second that. This is Jeremy.
Okay.
But that was the first motion from Roberta. See, this is where I'm pushing back on some of this for the minutes. Like the original motion was from Roberta that said senators can only serve 2 consecutive terms. Then there was a second by John. Then there was a discussion.
Hold on, Brian.
Yeah.
The history actually doesn't matter. The only thing that matters right now is the motion on the table. Lisa, yes, you are getting confused. Everyone in the room is struggling, and that's why we're going to try to slow this down and make this very clear. There was one motion on the table. The motion is for 2 terms.
Yep.
That is the entirety of the motion.
2 consecutive terms, right?
2 consecutive terms. Yep.
Okay. 2 consecutive terms. Yes, 3 years has already been established.
Okay. So then we're gonna vote.
Can someone please call the question so that we can close discussion?
Call the question.
Thank you. All those in favor of 2 consecutive terms?
No, point of order. You have to.
I have to vote on calling the question,
You
don't
got
I?
it.
Damn it, Miguel. I knew it. All those in favor of calling the question? Anyone opposed to calling the question? Yes. Thank you all. I love you. All of those in favor of 2 consecutive terms, please raise your hand. Joe, I see you laughing at me, and I'm glad I made you smile.
$19 is, yeah, I saw 19. 21. Now it's, hold on,
I
21.
just took mine away because I just wanted to clarify. Are we going to include language that if there's no other?
It is not part of the motion, Rhonda.
Okay, then I withdraw my yes vote.
Lower your hand, my friend.
Okay, hold on, it's going down and up again here.
Okay, so the motion is for 2 terms. We cannot put anything else on this. It is 2 terms.
That's a 2-term limit.
Yes.
Consecutive.
Right. John?
18.
18. Thank you.
Yep.
18, yes. Folks, please lower your hands. Two hands remain. 1 hand remains. Michelle? Thank you. All those opposed to 2 consecutive terms, please raise your hand. All those opposed?
4.
Go ahead and lower your hands, folks. Any abstentions? 1 abstention. The motion carries. We have 2 consecutive terms. We've had no bio break. It is 3:40. We have a significant amount of our agenda yet to address. What is the pleasure of the body? Roberta.
I move that we extend our meeting to maximum of 4:15.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Who was that, Kristen?
No, I'm sorry. It's Nicola. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, folks. If if you don't speak long enough, your picture doesn't light up. Any discussion? All those in favor of extending our meeting time?
I see 18.
Go ahead and lower your hands. All those opposed in extending our meeting time?
I see 6.
Go ahead and lower your hands. Any abstentions? The motion carries. All right, folks, I'm going to put us in recess for 5 minutes and ask that we come back at 3:47. We're in recess until 3:47.
Sarah, are you still on the call? Or did you step away?
Me? Rhonda?
No, Sarah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, my kids just got off the bus.
I'm sorry. Um, since we're gonna have to redo the staggering of terms to start for next year, I feel like that could be held off until, do we have a March meeting? Does anyone know if we have a March meeting?
For bylaws?
No, for the Senate.
Roberta, I'm proposing language that might be simple.
Okay, if you're working on that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then I was gonna say, while you're working on that, maybe Sarah, you move on number 4, the nominations and elections to Senate, because I think that's fairly simple. You know, the elections are held at the campuses, and then the committee itself handles our officer elections.
Yes, this term one was the one that.
Yeah, this was the one that was controversial.
Roberta, it's Nicola. We have our March meeting, March 22nd.
So we do have one. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
So I did put in the chat what a proposal that I would consider making a motion on. If anyone wants to give some preliminary feedback, since we're in recess.
Okay, so you've got the faculty. So the members at large are gone. You've got your faculty senators that are coming on.
Well, the members at
1 year?
large are going to be reelected this year, according to everyone's up for election in April.
Okay.
But we don't, since at
So,
large.
okay, so you're saying the at large would be a 3-year,
Yes.
right? Okay. And then the faculty would be 1 year, the staff would be 2-year, and those reduced yearly, those 1 and 2 years would not count toward a full term for this initial staggering of terms. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys a question, the committee, because I'm just curious, did you guys talk about, instead of having like, you know, all the senators, all the faculty, all the staff, did you talk about doing like a third, a third, a third?
We did a little bit. But then it went and moved to that's really how we set it up for the 2-year term, Miguel.
Because I mean, you can do it for the 3-year. If you do it for the 3-year, then that actually will give you the best assurance of making sure you have historical knowledge in all 3 groups.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking about. That's what I said earlier. So if we took it like in my 2-year group for alphabetical order, so the first 4 campuses would be Asnuntuck, Capital, Gateway, and Housatonic would be, say, year 1. Year 2 would be Manchester, Middlesex, Naugatuck, and Northwestern. And then the 3rd would be Norwalk, Quinnebog, Three Rivers, and Tungus. And that's still a fairly even distribution of larger, small, and middle schools.
Yeah.
Now, would you have?
It's just going to be hard.
You have all the senators from those campuses up for election at one time? So the 3 of us, Miguel, Roberta, and I, would all be up for re-election.
Yeah, that's the hard part, is then they're looking at all of Gateway's institutional knowledge on Senate is gone in 1 year.
At a campus level, it doesn't work. At a senatorial level, it works.
Right.
I mean, it's you know, it's which one do you want? The other thing, Roberta, did you see the language that I put in the chat regarding the election? What you were trying to come up with on the fly?
No, I'm sorry. Between looking at
I said in the event that a campus has no person interested in running for a term limited position, that the campus may vote to keep the existing senator.
Yes, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, so I was going to make that a motion when we come out of recess.
I'm down with that. Please do.
Because Rhonda brought that up as well as a concern that she had.
Nicola, yep.
So I think that'll take care of that.
Okay.
Okay, folks.
Well, we got a lot done in the last 3 minutes.
So Elle, both.
Oh, hold
Miguel-
on. I have to
both
bring it.
Miguel and I have
We're
potential
coming.
motions in the chat.
Okay, hold on. We're coming back into session. It's 3:47 and we're back into session. I see Sarah's hand first and then Miguel, and then I'll come to you, Alan. Sarah.
Nope, that was a mistake.
Okay. Miguel.
Yeah, so I have language. I'd like to make a motion. I just want to make sure Brian's back on the call.
I'm right here.
All right. This is what's in the chat, Brian. So if you want to look at it there too. But in the event that a campus has no person interested in running for a term limited position.
Hold on, Miguel, I don't see it in the chat. Did you send it to everybody?
Yeah, I don't see it either.
It's at
I see
3:34.
Alan is the last person in the chat.
3:34 p.m.
3:34 p.m.
3:34.
3:43.
Okay.
It's not there. The last
3:30.
thing in the chat is in order to establish staggered terms.
No, go backwards.
Oh, 3:34, Miguel. That's in the
Yep.
event of the campus. Okay.
That's
So
it.
you want that motion language?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So I will just state it for the body.
Yep.
And Rhonda, this was, I think, this was in part to address your concern as well. In the event that a campus has no person interested in running for a term limited position, the campus may vote to keep the existing senator.
I will second that, Roberta.
My rationale is to allow in situations where you have nobody else other than one person who's interested in running, to allow that campus to elect that person, the person who they choose. So it preserves the autonomy of the campus to elect their representatives. It also preserves Nick and others' concerns, Nicola's and others' concern about, senators for life.
Miguel, you made the motion. Who was the second?
Roberta.
And this is in addition to the motion that we passed before we.
Yes. So it would be
left.
like a subletter.
Okay. Any further discussion? John?
I support it. I think it's a good idea.
We have someone speaking in support. I will take one person speaking opposed. Seeing no hands, all those in
Actually,
favor of
I'm
the
going to
motion.
play devil's advocate for a half second. Miguel, how does this eliminate the, and I don't know why if Nicola would agree here. How does this eliminate the essence of that popular senator on campus who wants to go for a third term and by essence quietly bullies any competition out? Like how does this motion eliminate that concept to where we go back to Nicola's concern of I'm not willing to stick my neck up against that guy or that girl because they're the top dog on this campus?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Well,
but
so
the
that's
issue,
a-
well,
But
but
that's
the issue is this. I mean, the issue becomes you can't have it both ways, right? Either you do a hard cap, right, or you you have the potential for literally a campus to not be represented because they don't have anybody willing to step up to do it, or you allow for somebody to exceed the 2-year terms for two different reasons. One, because there's nobody who's interested in doing it. Two, because of the force of will to say they're so charismatic, like, don't you dare run against me because I will end you, right?
Can I play devil's advocate to that point again and say if a small campus chooses to not have anybody run because nobody's interested, isn't that the fault of the campus to not gather any sort of participation in governance? Like why is that? Why do we need to write the rules for a campus who chooses not to participate?
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, shame on you then.
Go ahead, Nick, you have the floor.
I was just going to say, shame on you, right? If your campus can't get enough interest to have new blood on there once that term limit has been maxed, shame on you.
I am calling on myself.
Go ahead, Elle.
Thank you. What happens on campuses and the way that campuses set up and administer their own campus governance is something that this body should respect. And the suggestion of to start to reach down into the campuses is really something that the college-wide Senate should resist. Yes, we want to see folks rotating through, but when the situation occurs that there is a vacancy, to suggest that the person who last served is prevented from serving, I think that we are going too far. We have to respect that sometimes campuses have to create and cobble together mechanisms that work for them. And I would urge us not to reach that far into campus governance and demonstrate restraint. Jeremy.
I would just like to throw it out there for any who are in a similar situation, having listened to all this, that I was initially supportive of this idea, but I have reconsidered. I think I do like the fact that the term limits are there. Someone must be forced off, because we've stated that. But then the campus can kind of figure out their own thing, and it encourages somebody new to step forward rather than us prescribing it. Like, the campuses will realize they will be without representation if somebody doesn't step up, and I think that will be a positive thing.
Jeremy, to your point, with Curriculum Congress, if folks weren't elected during the original election cycle and the small campuses could not find enough people to fill all of the needs last spring, they are unable to vote now. Even if they backfilled those positions later, as the campuses came together and said, all right, I'll do this if you do that, they do not have votes in Curriculum Congress. And this is exactly the kind of situation that we are creating. Robert.
Don't they not have votes on Curriculum Congress because of the way that the charter of the Congress was written? Not so much, right?
As NUNTREC did not have enough, literally did not have enough bodies to fill all of the spots, Nick. And when we tried to fill them later, we were told that we could put someone on to listen and participate in discussion, but we would not have a vote.
Yeah, no, Three Rivers is the exact same too. Because of the way that if you look at the Charter of Congress, it is written in such a way that it precludes numerous campuses because they did the small, medium, and large. There are numerous campuses that have no vote. We can send people there to listen, to bring the material, to bring information back, but they do not have a vote. Three Rivers is one. I think there's 2 or 3 of them that have no vote.
Roberta?
I think having this subsection in makes sense. We do not want management feeling like they have to appoint someone, even though our bylaws say that it would go through the elected governance body, a governance body. I still don't want management deciding who is going to represent a smaller institution because there's just no one available. So this gives it's a term limit. Adding the caveat to it allows for the smaller institutions, or any institution, frankly, who does not have someone who wants to run for the position. It also allows those who, and really it's not that like, oh, nobody wants to run, I'm going to get it automatically. Look, if that individual does not have the integrity to run a fair election, then hopefully that institution knows better and they'll find someone else to go up against them, but it's not for me to say that they have to do that. I would like us to move forward with the vote. I would be in favor of it.
Brian, you are our last speaker.
Yep. Final
We are
thought.
going to vote.
Would Miguel be interested in adjusting the language to say the following: that the campus may vote to keep the existing senator for an additional term? meaning that you get your 2 consecutive terms. The small campus can't get a person to volunteer. Campuses can override and allow that person to stay an additional term, but it is not indefinite.
Brian, I hear you and I understand your point. I would not accept it mainly because I'm not a believer in term limits. I believe that elections themselves are term limits. You know, and I know that's a minority opinion these days, but I just, you know, to me, have an election, step up and run. And if you don't, you don't. Then you get your person forever.
So we have a motion.
But I appreciate the suggestion, Brian. I do.
Fair point.
We have a motion. In the event that a campus has no person interested in running for a term limited position, the campus may vote to keep the existing senator. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
I have 15. Oh, still going. 16 in favor.
Okay, go ahead and lower your hands, folks. All those opposed? All those opposed?
I have
All those
six,
opposed?
6 opposed.
6 opposed.
Sorry,
Go
one
ahead.
more. One more. I was sleeping at the switch.
You're opposed?
I'm sorry.
Miguel?
No, scratch
This is
that.
your
I'm
motion.
confused.
You can't vote against your motion.
I know. Yeah. No.
You
scratch
were
that.
just seeing if I was paying attention, weren't you?
You know, little brain fried here.
Go ahead and lower your hands. Peter, there we go. And abstain. Abstentions. One abstention. The motion carries. Are we going to try to tackle staggering at this point in the day? Okay, Roberta, the floor is yours.
It's actually, I'm giving it to Alan.
Thanks. I put in the chat, it's at 3:43, Brian. My motion.
Can you read the motion for the,
Yes.
thank you,
Yes.
sir.
In order to establish staggered terms, all faculty senators will be elected to a 1-year term in April of 2024, and all staff senators will be elected to a 2-year term in April 2024, with subsequent elections for faculty and staff senators to be for 3-year terms. Terms shorter than 3 years do not count towards term limits.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second, John Fiorello.
Thank you, John. Is there any further discussion? Miguel?
Yeah, sorry. I know people are probably getting tired of me. And I apologize. Alan, do you want to are you not putting language about the at-large on purpose?
Because at large everyone's going to be up for re-election this April.
They're already for the 3-year. Okay,
And
I
they're
just
already
wanted,
being elected for
okay.
3-year terms.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank you. Yep.
And Roberta?
Thank you. The added piece to that is what was in the proposed language. Student senator term shall be 1 academic year in length.
It seems like maybe it's a separate issue, but
Well,
that's fine.
just want to get it done. Mhm.
But we have to, student senators, we have to talk about the timing and all that. I don't want to complicate this with that.
I
my
think,
thought.
Go ahead, Roberta.
I said it was just my thought to get it in there.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand.
18, 19, 20. Oh gosh. Okay, hold on. 22.
22. 22 in favor, please lower your hands. 22 in favor. All those opposed? All those opposed? Please raise your hands. No opposition. Abstentions. Any abstentions? The motion carries without objection. It is 4:03. We have up to 4:15, or we can adjourn at this point. What is the pleasure of the body? Is there a motion to adjourn? Miguel?
Move to adjourn.
Are there any
Nicola,
objections?
second.
Are there any objections? Peter, are you objecting? No. Are we all happy? Folks, I know that this was another grueling meeting, and we so appreciate you staying on and doing this work. It was critical that we got this far so that we can send out this language and our campuses can begin elections. Remember that you are a vital part of elections at your shared governance bodies and at your campuses. In order for us to be successful with elections, we need you to be vocal on your campuses. So thank you very much. Have a good week, folks, and we will see you in March.
Thank you, Elle.
Have a good one, everyone.
Have a good one, everyone.
Have a good one,
Bye,
everybody.
Great weekend.
Well, we never get through all of our business. You know,
We
it's
did
like
it
we
last
always,
week.
we always have to extend, but we always have to extend.